The arc reactor hummed in Tony Stark's chest as he stood in his Malibu workshop at 3 in the morning. Holographic schematics of the Mark 45 rotating before his eyes. Sleep had become optional again, a dangerous sign he recognized but chose to ignore. The armor designs were getting sleeker, more efficient, each iteration a step closer to perfection. Or so he told himself during these quiet hours when the anxiety crept in. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple spatial anomalies over Manhattan," Jarvis announced, his calm British tone cutting through Tony's focus. "Readings are extraordinary. Gravitational distortions consistent with theoretical wormhole formation." Tony swiped the hologram aside. "How theoretical are we talking?" "Entirely theoretical until approximately 7 seconds ago, sir. The anomalies are expanding rapidly. SHIELD has already scrambled response teams." "Of course they have." Tony was already moving toward the armor assembly platform. "Show me." The workshop's main screen lit up with satellite footage of New York's Midtown district. The night sky above Manhattan tore open like fabric ripping under impossible stress, a swirling vortex of distorted space that made Tony's stomach clench with memories of wormholes and alien invasions. But what emerged wasn't a Chitauri army. 3 massive mechanical giants fell through the rift, their descent slowed by roaring jets of flame that scorched the air. Each stood at least 40 feet tall, bipedal war machines bristling with weapon systems. Tony's engineer brain immediately began cataloging. Angular armor plating, heavy cannons mounted on arms and torsos, missile pods, and what looked like energy weapons of some kind. They crashed into the streets with impacts that registered on seismographs, their massive feet crushing asphalt and sending cars tumbling aside like toys. "Jarvis, what am I looking at?" "Unknown technology, sir. Design philosophy suggests military application, heavy assault platforms with multiple weapon systems, fusion signatures detected. These are not drones." "Piloted?" Tony's hands moved through the holographic interface, summoning the Mark 45. "Of course they're piloted. Why does nobody build drones anymore?" The armor assembled around him in seconds, each piece locking into place with satisfying precision. The HUD flickered to life, flooding his vision with data as repulsors charged. Through the faceplate, he watched the 3 machines begin moving, their pilots clearly disoriented, weapon systems tracking in all directions. "Sir, SHIELD Director Fury is attempting to contact you. Tell him I'm already in the air." The floor beneath Tony opened, and he dropped into the tunnel that would launch him from the cliff face. "And tell him, if he sends in the heavy artillery before I assess the situation, I'm billing him for property damage." The California coastline blurred past as he accelerated to Mach 3, the armor's systems humming with power. The flight to New York took minutes that felt like seconds, his mind racing faster than the repulsors. Giant robots. Of course it was giant robots. The universe had thrown gods, aliens, and artificial intelligence at him. Why not 40-foot-tall war machines? "Jarvis, open a channel, all frequencies." "Channel open, sir." "Attention, unidentified mechs? Is that what we're calling them?" Tony descended into Manhattan airspace, the city lights spreading beneath him like a circuit board. "This is Iron Man. You just dropped into New York City, which means you're on Earth, which means you're in my neighborhood. Power down your weapon systems, and we can talk about how you got here and how to get you home. Or we can do this the hard way, and trust me, you don't want the hard way." One of the machines turned toward him, its movements surprisingly fluid for something so massive. Up close, the design was even more impressive. Sophisticated actuators, what looked like a fusion reactor in the torso, advanced targeting systems tracking his flight path. The pilot inside was skilled. Tony could tell from the precise movements, the way the weapon systems acquired him without overcompensating. A voice crackled over the radio, male, tense, with an accent Tony couldn't place. Unknown aircraft. Identify yourself and your allegiance. What planet is this? What year? Tony landed on a rooftop 50 meters away. Repulsors primed. That's a lot of questions from someone who just dropped 3 walking tanks into my city. But I'm feeling generous. Planet Earth, year 2015, specifically Manhattan, New York. As for allegiance, I'm with the good guys. Usually, your turn. The mech's cockpit was visible now through reinforced canopy glass. A single pilot in a cooling vest and neurohelmet, surrounded by displays and controls that looked almost medieval compared to Tony's holographic interface. The pilot's face was illuminated by warning lights. Confusion and combat readiness warring for dominance. Earth, the pilot repeated. We were in the periphery. Jump drive malfunction during a combat drop. The rift. He paused, clearly processing. We're not in Kansas anymore. Nobody's been in Kansas for that joke to work in years, Tony said. But points for trying. Look, I get it. Dimensional displacement, reality confusion, standard Tuesday for me. But those weapons you're packing could level city blocks. SHIELD, think government super soldiers, secret police, has you surrounded. Helicarriers are inbound. And if you make any move that looks hostile, this situation gets exponentially worse for everyone. The pilot's mech shifted, and Tony's targeting systems immediately locked on. We're mech warriors of the Free Russell Hague Republic. Mercenary contract with Clan Wolf. These are battle mechs, not walking tanks. And we don't surrender to unknown forces. Mech warriors. Battle mechs. Tony's mind was already working through the implications, the technology, the military doctrine, the fact that somewhere in the multiverse, people built giant piloted robots instead of powered armor. Here's what I'm thinking. You're lost, probably low on supplies, definitely confused about where and when you are. I'm a genius billionaire philanthropist with resources and a vested interest in keeping Manhattan intact. We can either figure this out together, or you can fight SHIELD, lose, and spend the next decade in a containment facility, while government scientists take your rides apart bolt by bolt. Through the HUD, Tony watched the other 2 mechs move into defensive positions, their pilots clearly listening to the conversation. Professional soldiers, he recognized. They moved like a unit, covered each other's blind spots, maintained tactical spacing. Whoever they were, they knew how to fight. What's your name, mech warrior? Tony asked. A long pause. Then, Captain Eric Voss, Assault Lance Commander. And if you're lying about helping us, Iron Man, you'll learn why 30-ton autocannons are called battle mech killers. Tony grinned inside his helmet. Oh, I like you already. Fair warning, though, I've fought gods. Giant robots are going to have to really impress me. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. With great power comes great responsibility. The standoff held for 3 more seconds before Tony made his decision. Jarvis, contact Director Fury. Tell him we're bringing our new friends in for a conversation, not a containment. And start running analysis on those fusion reactors. I want to know everything about how those machines work. Shall I prepare the workshop, sir? Tony looked at the 3 massive war machines, their weapons still tracking him, their pilots waiting for any sign of betrayal. In their position, he'd do the same. Hell, He had done the same, more times than he could count. "No," he said slowly. "Prep the Avengers facility. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. And get me everything on parallel universe theory. Something tells me this is going to be a long night." Above them, the dimensional rift finally collapsed with a soundless implosion, severing whatever connection had brought the battle mechs to this reality. Captain Voss's voice came over the radio again, quieter now, tinged with the realization of what that meant. "Our way home just closed." Tony's arc reactor flared brighter as he lifted off, gesturing for the mechs to follow. "Then I guess we'd better figure out how to open it again. Come on, Captain. Let's go meet the rest of Earth's defenders. Try not to step on any cars." The Avengers facility upstate had been designed to accommodate extraordinary situations. But 3 40-foot battle mechs standing in the main hangar still managed to push the definition of extraordinary. Tony watched from a catwalk as Captain Eric Voss and his 2 fellow mech warriors, Lieutenant Sophia Markov and Sergeant James Chen, carefully powered down their machines, the massive fusion reactors cycling into standby mode with a deep thrumming that vibrated through the floor. S.H.I.E.L.D. had been surprisingly cooperative once Tony convinced Fury this wasn't an invasion. Surprisingly cooperative for Fury meant only 3 helicarriers instead of 5, and agents surrounding the facility perimeter instead of storming it. Progress. Jarvis. Full spectral analysis. I want to know everything about those machines. Scanning now, sir. Initial observations are fascinating. The fusion reactors are significantly larger than arc reactor technology but operate on similar principles. Deuterium-helium reactions, magnetic confinement. Crude by our standards, but remarkably robust. Tony descended the stairs as the cockpit of Voss's mech. Jarvis had identified it as a Timberwolf based on intercepted radio chatter, hissed open. The mech warrior climbed down using handholds built into the machine's leg, his cooling vest dripping with sweat despite the climate-controlled facility. Up close, Voss looked to be in his mid-30s, scarred face and military bearing speaking to years of combat experience. "Welcome to Earth," Tony said, extending a hand. "The real Earth? The one without, what did you call them? Clans?" Voss shook his hand warily, grip firm. "Clan Wolf. We were contracted for a defensive operation in the periphery when the jump drive malfunctioned. One moment we were dropping onto a contested planet, the next..." He gestured at the facility around them. Your technology is incredible. Those flying machines, helicarriers, and your armor." His eyes studied the Mark 45 with professional appreciation. "I've never seen anything that small pack that much firepower. Years of miniaturization and a healthy disregard for conventional physics." Tony pulled up a holographic display between them, showing the scan data from the battle mechs. "Your fusion reactors, though, those are impressive. Significantly different design philosophy from my arc reactor. More power output, but less efficient in terms of size-to-yield ratio." Lieutenant Markov joined them. A tall woman with close-cropped blonde hair and the same exhausted alertness of someone yanked from combat into confusion. Her battle mech, a mad cat according to the database Jarvis was building from their communications, stood like a silent guardian behind her. "You're analyzing our technology already?" "I'm analyzing everything," Tony said unapologetically. "It's what I do. But I'm also trying to help. That rift that brought you here, Jarvis recorded the entire event. If we can understand the mechanics, maybe we can recreate it. Send you home." Sergeant Chen descended from his mech last, younger than the others, maybe late 20s, with augmented cybernetic implants visible along his temples. neural interface ports that made Tony's own brain itch with questions about how they connected pilot to machine. With respect, Iron Man, how do we know this isn't some elaborate capture operation? For all we know, you're Comstar agents with advanced loss tech. Comstar? Tony looked at Voss. Interstellar Communications Guild. They control the hyperpulse generator network that keeps the inner sphere connected, also known for hoarding technology and manipulating conflicts. Voss's tone suggested significant personal history with the organization. Chen's paranoia is justified. In our universe, technology like yours would start wars. Hell, technology like ours starts wars. Here too, Tony admitted. I've had more people try to steal my armor designs than I can count. But I'm not interested in your battle mechs. Well, I'm interested, but not in that way. I build suits, not giant robots. Different design philosophy. Personal protection versus mobile weapons platform. He gestured to the holographic display, expanding it to show the dimensional rift data. The energy signature that brought you here matches theoretical models for Einstein-Rosen bridges, wormholes. But the power requirements should have been astronomical. Your jump drive somehow punched through dimensional barriers, not just spatial ones. That's not supposed to be possible. Voss studied the data with surprising comprehension. Kearney Fuchida jump drives work by creating a hyperspace field that allows FTL travel between star systems. The field collapsed mid-jump when we took fire. The explosion must have torn through something deeper than normal space. Hyperspace, multiple universes, parallel dimensions. It's all connected in ways we're still figuring out. Tony minimized the display and looked at each mech warrior in turn. Look, I know you don't trust me. You shouldn't. Trust gets people killed. But you're in my universe now, stranded with 3 walking arsenals that every government, terrorist organization, and corporate vulture on this planet is going to want to acquire. You need allies who can keep you safe while we figure out the physics. I need to make sure your weapons don't accidentally start in World War III. Is that a threat? Markov's hand drifted toward the sidearm, holstered at her hip. A heavy laser pistol that Tony's sensors identified as capable of punching through standard body armor. It's reality, Tony said calmly. Outside this facility, there are SHIELD agents, military units, and probably a dozen intelligence agencies, all very interested in you. Give me 48 hours. Let me study your technology, share mine, and work the dimensional physics. If I can't help you get home, at least I can help you survive here. The 3 mech warriors exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. Combat veterans, Tony recognized. They'd fought together long enough to read each other without words. Finally, Voss nodded. 48 hours, but our mechs stay powered and armed, and we sleep in shifts. Fair enough. Tony gestured toward the facility's interior. Jarvis will show you to quarters, real beds, hot showers, food that doesn't come from military rations. One thing Earth definitely has over your universe, we've perfected the cheeseburger. As the mech warriors headed inside, escorted by Jarvis's directions through the facility's speaker system, Tony remained in the hangar, studying the 3 battle mechs. Each one was a masterpiece of military engineering. Weapons systems integrated into every surface, armor plating designed to absorb tremendous punishment, cockpits positioned for maximum pilot survivability. They were built for war in a way his suits weren't, designed for prolonged combat rather than rapid response. Jarvis, deep analysis. I want metallurgical composition, weapons yield calculations, reactor efficiency ratings, and every scrap of data we can pull from their communications. Also, start modeling dimensional bridge physics. If their jump drive could tear through reality once, we might be able to replicate it. Sir, Director Fury is requesting an update. Tony sighed. Tell him I'm busy doing science. Also tell him if he tries to confiscate these mechs, I'll personally ensure every embarrassing SHIELD secret ends up on WikiLeaks. I'm certain that will ease tensions, sir. That's why you're my favorite AI, Jarvis. You appreciate my diplomatic skills. Tony walked around one of the battle mechs, his armor's sensors recording every detail. The technology was decades, maybe centuries, behind his own in some ways, yet remarkably advanced in others. Fusion power, directed energy weapons, and myomer artificial muscles that put most Earth robotics to shame. His mind was already racing with possibilities. The arc reactor could revolutionize their power systems. Their weapons could be miniaturized with Stark tech. And those neural interfaces, connecting human thought directly to machine response. That was something he'd experimented with, but never fully implemented. Sir, I should point out that reverse engineering alien technology has historically led to complications. They're not aliens, Jarvis. They're humans from another universe where people decided the logical evolution of warfare was building giant robots instead of powered armor. Which, admittedly, is pretty cool even if it's tactically questionable. Tony returned to his workstation, holographic displays blooming around him as he began compiling data. Somewhere in this facility were 3 soldiers who'd been yanked from their war and dropped into his world. They'd trusted him, barely, reluctantly, but they'd trusted him. The least he could do was earn it. And maybe, just maybe, figure out why the universe kept throwing impossible things at him. Gods, aliens, artificial intelligence, and now interdimensional soldiers. At this rate, he'd need to expand his list of things Tony Stark has fought. The Mark 45 retracted, armor panels sliding away to leave him in his workshop clothes. He grabbed a cup of coffee that Jarvis had helpfully prepared and got to work. 48 hours. He'd done more with less. Morning broke over the Avengers facility with Eric Voss standing guard beside his Timberwolf, watching the sun rise over unfamiliar terrain. Everything about this world felt wrong. The air smelled different, the gravity felt slightly off, and the complete absence of jump ship traffic in orbit created an eerie silence he'd never experienced. In the inner sphere, space was never empty. Here, it was almost peaceful. "You're up early?" Voss turned to find Iron Man approaching, though the armor was different from last night. Sleeker, colored in red and gold rather than the silver gray of the Mark 45. The faceplate retracted to reveal Tony Stark's face, coffee cup in one hand and a tablet in the other. "Couldn't sleep," Voss admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I'm back in the drop, wondering if my lance is going to survive the landing. Then I wake up and remember we're not in the periphery anymore. We're not even in our universe." Stark took a long drink of coffee. "PTSD. I know the feeling. After New York, our alien invasion a few years back, I couldn't sleep without the armor nearby. Built 43 suits in a manic episode. Blew them all up eventually, grand gesture for my girlfriend. Didn't help much. The anxiety doesn't care about grand gestures." Voss studied the billionaire genius with new appreciation. "You fight in armor that's sophisticated and still get nightmares?" "The armor doesn't stop the memories. It just gives me something to focus on instead." Stark gestured to the tablet. "Speaking of which, I spent the night running analysis on your fusion reactors. The engineering is fascinating. Magnetic confinement bottles, deuterium-helium cycling, heat management systems that would make our nuclear engineers weep with envy. The power output is nearly 10 times my arc reactor. But the size efficiency is where we differ. Your reactors are built to run for years without maintenance. Mine are built to fit in a chest cavity. Different priorities, Voss said. Battle mechs are designed for extended campaigns, months of operation with minimal logistical support. Your armor seems built for rapid deployment and return to base. Superhero doctrine versus military doctrine. Stark pulled up holographic schematics, the morning light making them slightly harder to see, but still visible. I've been thinking about the applications. If I could miniaturize your fusion technology to arc reactor scale, the power output would be revolutionary. And if you could integrate arc reactor efficiency into your battle mechs, you'd reduce mass by 30% while maintaining the same power levels. Voss felt his pulse quicken. In the inner sphere, lost technology from the Star League era, was worth fortunes and started wars. The idea of freely sharing advanced technology with a stranger was fundamentally alien to his combat experience. You'd just give us that? Arc reactor technology? If it helps get you home, yeah. Stark looked genuinely confused by the question. I'm not in the business of hoarding world-changing technology. Well, not anymore. I used to be, until I realized that makes you part of the problem. Besides, it's not like you can mass-produce it in your universe without the infrastructure. And if you could... He shrugged. Maybe it stops a few wars. The inner sphere sounds like it could use fewer wars. The inner sphere is nothing but wars, Voss said quietly. Succession wars lasted centuries. The clans invaded 30 years ago. Every house, every faction, every mercenary company is fighting for something. Territory, technology, honor, survival. Battle mechs are how we survive. They're how we matter. Stark was quiet for a moment, then said, That's the saddest thing I've heard in weeks, and I deal with government oversight committees. You pilot giant war machines because that's the only way to be relevant in your universe? We pilot battle mechs because we're good at it, Voss corrected, defensive edge creeping into his voice. Because someone has to stand between civilians and the next invasion. Because we're mech warriors. And I'm Iron Man, Stark said. Built the armor to escape terrorists. Kept using it to protect people. Different scale, same principle. We're not that different, Captain. Behind them, the hangar bay doors opened as Lieutenant Markov and Sergeant Chen emerged, both looking marginally better after showers and sleep. Markov carried a tray of food from the facility cafeteria, her expression suggesting she was still processing the sheer abundance of resources available here. Real eggs, she said, almost reverent. Not synthetic, not ration bars, real eggs. Stark, if this is a simulation, don't wake me up. The food is real, Lieutenant. So is the coffee, which you should try. It's the only thing keeping me functional right now. Stark gestured them over to where he'd set up a holographic workspace in the hangar. I wanted to brief you all on what I found overnight. The dimensional rift physics are complicated. Chen leaned forward, his neural implants gleaming in the morning light. Can you recreate it? Maybe. The energy signature matches theoretical wormhole mechanics, but the power requirements are insane. Your Kearney-Fuchida drive tapped into something called hyperspace in your universe. Here we call it the quantum realm, subatomic dimensions where normal physics breaks down. The explosion during your jump must have created a bridge between dimensional boundaries. Stark pulled up a complex diagram showing overlapping dimensional layers. To send you back, we'd need to generate a similar energy spike, create a stable bridge, and navigate it to your specific universe. The problem is, we have no idea what the dimensional address is for your reality. It's like trying to find one specific phone number in an infinite directory. So we're stuck, Voss said, the weight of it settling in his chest, his lance, his unit, whatever battle they'd been fighting. All of it was gone, happening in another universe without them. I didn't say that. Stark's eyes had that manic gleam Voss was beginning to recognize as the engineer seeing a challenge. I said it's complicated. I've dealt with worse. Alien invasions, artificial intelligence trying to commit genocide. That time I had shrapnel in my chest and had to build a miniature reactor to stay alive. This is just physics. Physics can be solved. How long? Markov asked. Days, maybe weeks, could be months. Stark met their eyes honestly. I won't lie to you. This isn't a quick fix. But I have resources, connections, and a friend who's literally a master of the mystic arts. We'll figure it out. In the meantime, Chen said carefully, what happens to us? To our mechs? That's the complicated part. Stark shifted the holographic display to show news footage. Video of their arrival being played on every major network, speculation running wild about alien invaders, military weapons, international incidents. You're famous. 30 seconds of footage, and you're on every screen on the planet. S.H.I.E.L.D. is managing the narrative, calling you displaced dimensional travelers under protective custody. But that only works until someone decides you're too valuable to leave in my hands. Voss's military instincts immediately understood the implications. We're targets. You're assets. In a world with super soldiers, alien technology, and corporate espionage at levels that make your succession wars look tame, 3 fully armed battle mechs represent a significant power shift. I can protect you here. The Avengers facility has defenses that would make your dropship captains jealous. But eventually, someone's going to make a move. Then we fight, Markov said simply. We've faced worse odds. Against governments and organizations with resources you can't imagine. Stark shook his head. You'd lose. Not because you're not good enough, you're clearly elite pilots, but because you don't know the terrain, the politics, or the players. You need allies. We have you, Chen pointed out. You have me, Stark agreed. And through me, you have the Avengers, Earth's defenders against planetary-scale threats. But that comes with responsibilities. If you want protection, you need to help protect. If something comes at this facility, at this planet, I need to know you'll stand with us. Voss exchanged glances with his lancemates. In the inner sphere, mercenary contracts were sacred, honor-bound agreements that defined a mech warrior's reputation. What Stark was proposing was essentially a contract of mutual defense, protection in exchange for combat support. We're mercenaries, Voss said slowly. We don't fight for free. If you want our lances in your service, we negotiate terms. Stark grinned. Now we're speaking the same language. Okay, Captain. Let's talk terms. You provide tactical support and combat capability if this facility is threatened. In exchange, I provide housing, resources, technology sharing, and every resource I have toward getting you home. I cover your operational costs. And trust me, fusion reactor maintenance alone is probably expensive. You maintain autonomy over your mechs and mission acceptance. If I need you for something ethically questionable, you have the right to refuse. And if someone tries to take our mechs? Markov asked. Then they go through me first, Stark said flatly. And anyone who wants to go through Iron Man better bring an army. Voss extended his hand. You have a contract, Stark. Fair terms, honestly offered. We'll stand with you until we can return home. They shook on it. the ancient gesture carrying weight across dimensional boundaries. Around them, 3 battle mechs stood silent, witness to an alliance forged between worlds. Soldiers and superhero, military doctrine and genius engineering, united by necessity and unexpected respect. "Jarvis," Stark said, "make a note. We're officially expanding the Avengers roster. Welcome to Earth, mech warriors. Try not to step on anything important." The workshop beneath Stark Tower hummed with activity as Tony worked alongside 3 mech warriors who were discovering that their new ally was functionally incapable of sitting still. Holographic displays surrounded them in a semicircle, each showing different aspects of Battlemech and Iron Man technology, broken down to fundamental principles. "This is insane," Chen muttered, studying the arc reactor schematic Tony had casually shared. "In the inner sphere, you'd be executed for revealing this kind of technology to outsiders. Comstar would have you disappeared just for drawing these diagrams." "Comstar sounds delightful. I'm glad we don't have them here." Tony gestured, and the hologram shifted to overlay arc reactor components onto a Battlemech fusion reactor core. "Look at this integration point. If we replaced your magnetic confinement system with arc reactor field generation, we could reduce reactor mass by 40% while maintaining power output. The heat efficiency alone would revolutionize your designs." Voss leaned forward, his combat-trained mind immediately seeing tactical applications. Lighter reactors mean more payload capacity. We could mount heavier weapons or additional armor without sacrificing mobility. A Timberwolf could carry Atlas-class armament, or maintain current armament and increase speed significantly. Markov added, her fingers tracing the holographic components. "What's the production complexity? In our universe, even simple myomer replacement requires specialized facilities. This looks complicated," Tony admitted. "Arc reactor technology requires precision manufacturing at molecular levels. The palladium core alone needs perfect crystal lattice structure. I can build them because I have fabrication equipment that doesn't exist anywhere else on Earth. You'd need to replicate my entire workshop infrastructure to mass-produce these." "So it's lost tech," Voss said. "Advanced technology limited by production capability. We have the same problem with Star League-era equipment. We know how it works. We just can't build more of it." Tony frowned. That's a depressing way to look at scientific progress. Knowledge shouldn't be limited by manufacturing. If I can build it, anyone should be able to learn how. He pulled up another schematic. "Which brings me to your neural interface systems. Those implants Chen has, they connect directly to the Battlemech's control systems?" Chen touched the interface ports at his temples self-consciously. "Neurohelmet connection. Translates thought into machine response, reduces reaction time, improves targeting accuracy. Every mech warrior uses them, but some of us..." He hesitated. "Have augmented implants for better integration," Markov finished. "Chen's one of the best pilots in the inner sphere specifically because his neural architecture is optimized for machine interface. He thinks and the mech responds. No lag, no interpretation delay. Direct brain-to-machine interface." Tony's eyes lit up with that particular intensity that Jarvis had learned meant sleep would be optional for the next 72 hours. "I've experimented with neural feedback systems in the armor, but never full thought control. The latency issues alone. Jarvis, start modeling integration protocols. If we can combine their neurohelmet technology with my armor's control systems..." "Sir, I feel compelled to point out that directly linking human neurology to advanced weapon systems has significant ethical implications." "Jarvis is right," Voss said. Neural interface isn't without risks. Feedback can cause psychological damage, especially in combat. We've lost pilots to neural shock when their mechs took catastrophic damage. The brain interprets machine damage as personal injury. Tony paused, actually considering the warning. So the machine becomes an extension of your body? You feel what it feels? Not exactly pain, but awareness. Damage to your mech is damage to yourself in a neurological sense. Chen's expression was distant, clearly remembering something traumatic. When my mad cat lost its right arm in the periphery, I couldn't move my right arm for 3 days. Phantom limb syndrome, but for a machine. Most mech warriors experience similar effects. That's horrifying and fascinating in equal measure. Tony made notes in the holographic interface. The psychological integration is deeper than I thought. You're not just piloting these machines, you're inhabiting them. It's closer to my armor than I realized, except I retain separation. You deliberately blur the line. It's what makes us effective, Markov said. A mech warrior and their mech become one weapon system. We think and move as a single unit. That's why our combat doctrine emphasizes individual pilot skill over coordinated drone tactics. One elite mech warrior is worth a dozen conventional tanks. Different philosophy than Earth's military doctrine, Tony observed. We tend toward combined arms, infantry, armor, air support, all coordinated. Your approach is more feudal, knights in mechanical armor? That's exactly what we are, Voss confirmed. The social structure of the inner sphere is built around battle mech combat. Noble houses field mech regiments. Mercenary companies sell their services. Clan warriors earn their position through ritual combat. The entire civilization revolves around who has mechs and who can pilot them effectively. Tony was quiet for a moment, processing that. So, when I said earlier that piloting giant war machines is how you matter in your universe, I wasn't exaggerating. It's literally your social currency. For better or worse, Voss said. House Steiner fields regiments of assault mechs and controls shipping lanes. Clan Ghost Bear values martial prowess above all else. If you can't pilot, you're second class. If you pilot poorly, you're cannon fodder. If you pilot exceptionally, he gestured to himself and his lance. You survive long enough to get stranded in alternate dimensions. Meritocracy based on combat performance, Tony mused. There's something almost honest about that. At least you know where you stand. Here, we pretend we're all equal while billionaires like me basically run everything. He caught their expressions. What? You're remarkably self-aware for someone with that much power, Markov said carefully. Years of therapy and near-death experiences. Highly recommend both. Tony shifted the holographic display again, this time showing his workshop's fabrication systems. Look, here's what I'm thinking. We can't send you home immediately, but we can upgrade your mechs while we work on the dimensional physics. Improved reactor efficiency, enhanced weapons systems, better armor plating. I have access to materials your universe hasn't developed. Vibranium alloys, carbon nanotube composites, energy shielding technology. We integrate my tech into your frames. And when we do get you home, you'll have battle mechs unlike anything the inner sphere has seen. Chen's eyes widened. You're talking about creating Lost Tech level equipment, mechs that could change the balance of power across the entire inner sphere. I'm talking about giving you the tools to survive, Tony corrected. If your universe is as dangerous as you describe, you need every advantage. Consider it payment for the technology exchange. You let me study your fusion reactors and neural interfaces. I make sure your mechs are the most advanced weapons platforms in any dimension. There's a catch, Voss said. Not a question. Always is. The catch is time. Full integration and upgrades will take weeks, maybe months. You're stuck here anyway while we solve the dimensional bridge problem. Might as well make productive use of the time. Tony pulled up a fabrication timeline. I'm thinking we start with Voss's Timberwolf. Full reactor overhaul, weapons system upgrades, armor enhancement. Use it as a proof of concept, then apply lessons learned to the other two mechs. Markov studied the timeline critically. That's ambitious. In our universe, even basic mech refits take months in dedicated facilities with full-tech crews. Good thing I'm not from your universe. Tony grinned. Jarvis, show them the fabrication array. The holographic display shifted to show the workshop's manufacturing systems, molecular forges, nanotech assemblers, automated construction drones, and precision tools that looked like they belonged in science fiction, even to people who piloted giant robots. Voss felt his breath catch. This was beyond Star League Lost Tech. This was technology that shouldn't exist. How? Chen whispered. Started with the arc reactor, built from there. Each advancement funded the next until I had manufacturing capability that lets me prototype armor suits in weeks instead of years. I can literally print precision components at molecular resolution. Tony's voice carried pride, but also weariness. It's also why everyone keeps trying to steal my technology. This workshop could revolutionize global manufacturing if I released it. It could also arm every terrorist organization on the planet. So I keep it close, use it carefully, and try not to think about the moral implications too hard. Isolation of Lost Tech, Voss said quietly. You're doing exactly what Comstar does, controlling technology to prevent widespread conflict. Except I'm not executing people who find out about it, or manipulating governments to maintain monopoly. I'm just... Tony trailed off, then laughed without humor. Yeah, okay, it's not that different. Benevolent dictatorship of scientific progress. Add it to the list of things I need to process in therapy. The workshop fell silent, except for the ambient hum of electronics and manufacturing equipment. 4 engineers from different universes, each carrying the weight of advanced technology and the responsibilities that came with it. In that moment, Voss understood why Stark had been so willing to help. He recognized them, recognized the burden of being the person who knew how to build the weapons everyone wanted, but no one should have. Start with my Timberwolf, Voss said finally. If anyone's going to test experimental upgrades, it should be the Lance Commander. That's the deal. Tony nodded slowly. Fair enough. Jarvis, begin fabrication protocols. We're building the most advanced battle mech in the multiverse. And if that doesn't work out, at least we'll have spectacular failure data. Reassuring, sir. That's why I keep you around, Jarvis. Your boundless optimism brightens every day. Around them, holographic displays bloomed with technical specifications as 2 different universes' technologies began their merger. Outside, the sun rose over a world that had no idea 3 mech warriors had just gained access to Earth's most advanced manufacturing facility, or that Tony Stark had just begun reverse engineering fusion technology that could change his armor forever. And in classified SHIELD facilities, intelligence analysts were already noting unusual energy signatures coming from Stark Tower and preparing reports for organizations that would very much like to know what Iron Man was building now. The conference room at Hammer Industries gleamed with chrome and glass, a monument to corporate excess that Justin Hammer believed projected success. In reality, it projected insecurity. But that distinction was lost on the man pacing before the display screens, showing news footage of 3 battle mechs standing in Manhattan. Those machines, Hammer said, gesturing dramatically at the frozen image. Those beautiful, military-grade, government contract-winning machines are sitting in Stark's facility. Stark gets alien tech, Asgardian artifacts, and now giant robots from another dimension, while he tapped his chest, get congressional hearings and export restrictions. Across the table, Dr. Breakenauer Aldrich Killian smiled with the particular confidence of someone who'd survived being blown up and come back with enhanced biology and a score to settle. The extremis virus hummed beneath his skin, keeping him alive and giving him patience he'd never possessed before. Tony Stark has always had a talent for acquiring what others want, Killian said smoothly. But he's also predictable. He'll study those machines, integrate their technology into his armor, and never consider the broader applications. That's where we come in. We can't exactly walk into the Avengers facility and ask nicely. Hammer pointed out. S.H.I.E.L.D. has it locked down. 3 helicarriers in rotating patrol, satellite coverage, ground forces. It's a fortress. Then we don't go through the front door. Killian pulled up schematics on the display, replacing the news footage with detailed facility layouts that shouldn't have been available to anyone outside S.H.I.E.L.D. command structure. We have assets inside S.H.I.E.L.D. Hydra remnants, sympathetic agents, people who understand that advanced technology shouldn't be monopolized by one billionaire with hero delusions. Hammer leaned forward, interest overcoming his usual bluster. You're talking about infiltration? I'm talking about acquisition. Those battle mechs represent fusion reactor technology decades ahead of current models, weapons systems that could revolutionize military contracts, and neural interface capabilities that could transform human-machine integration. The pilots are secondary, valuable for information, but ultimately expendable. We want the machines. In the corner of the room, a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent named Marcus Webb sat quietly, his expression neutral. To anyone watching, he appeared to be standard security, present but unobtrusive. In reality, Webb had been Hydra long before S.H.I.E.L.D. discovered the infiltration, and he'd survived the purge by being unremarkable. Now, he listened as 2 of the world's most dangerous men planned to steal weapons that could change global power dynamics. The pilots won't give up their mechs without a fight, Webb said carefully. Military types trained for combat, and Stark's armor makes him nearly unstoppable in close quarters. Nearly, Killian emphasized. Extremis enhances human capabilities to superhuman levels. Regeneration, strength, heat generation. I've had 2 years to refine the formula after our last encounter. And Stark's armor, impressive as it is, has one critical vulnerability. He smiled. It requires power. Cut the arc reactor, and Tony Stark is just a man with shrapnel in his chest and rapidly fading options. Hammer rubbed his hands together. Okay, I'm listening. What's the play? We move in 3 days, during the technology integration phase. Stark will be focused on the battle mech upgrades, distracted by engineering problems. We insert a strike team, extremist soldiers augmented with weapons from your R&D division. They disable Stark, secure the pilots, and extract 1 battle mech for our analysis. 1. Hammer looked disappointed. We're going to all this trouble for 1? 1 is all we need to reverse engineer the technology. More would increase extraction complexity and S.H.I.E.L.D. response time. We take the smallest one. Killian zoomed the display to show Chen's Jenner. High mobility, easier to transport, still contains all the critical systems we need to study. Webb considered the plan's viability. Extraction method? Cargo transport, heavy lift capacity. We'll need a drop ship equivalent, something that can move 40 tons of battle mech under stealth conditions. Killian looked at Hammer. You still have contacts in the military-industrial sector who can acquire heavy transport without attracting attention. For the right price, I can acquire anything, Hammer said confidently. Transport, weapons, personnel. Hell, I can probably get us a submarine if you want to go full Bond villain. But the real question is what happens after. S.H.I.E.L.D. will come after us. Stark will come after us. You're talking about declaring war on the Avengers. I'm talking about acquiring technology that will make the Avengers irrelevant, Killian corrected. Imagine it. Extremist soldiers piloting battle mechs with fusion reactors. Regenerating super soldiers and 40-foot war machines with enough firepower to level city blocks. We wouldn't need to fight the Avengers. We'd be so far ahead they couldn't catch up. The vision hung in the air, tempting and terrible. Hammer saw government contracts, military applications, and stock prices that would make him richer than Stark. Killian saw revenge wrapped in technological superiority, and the chance to prove his genius exceeded Tony Stark's. Webb saw Hydra's chance to rebuild with weapons that could challenge even enhanced humans. 3 days, Hammer said finally. I'll have the transport and personnel ready. But if this goes wrong, it won't, Killian said with absolute certainty. Stark thinks he's safe behind his technology and his reputation. He forgets that sometimes the simplest solution is just taking what you want. The age of heroes is ending, gentlemen. The age of enhanced warfare is beginning. And we're going to be the ones who define it. At the Avengers facility, Tony was oblivious to the conspiracy forming. He stood beneath Voss's Timberwolf, watching as robotic arms carefully removed armor plating to access the fusion reactor core. Jarvis coordinated the disassembly with precision that made even Voss, who'd overseen countless mech repairs, impressed by the efficiency. Reactor removal in 40 minutes at current pace, Jarvis reported. Structural integrity maintained. Support systems isolated. I must say, sir, the engineering on these machines is remarkably robust. Redundant systems, fail-safes, and damage mitigation protocols throughout. They're built to get shot at and keep fighting, Tony said, studying the exposed reactor housing. Different design philosophy from my suits. I dodge, they absorb. Both valid approaches. He looked up at Voss, who stood on a maintenance platform level with the cockpit. How does it feel watching your mech get taken apart? Uncomfortable, Voss admitted. A mech warrior's machine is their livelihood, their protection, their identity. It's like watching someone perform surgery on your body while you're still conscious. That's the neural interface talking, the psychological integration we discussed. Tony made notes on his tablet. Once we install the arc reactor, that connection is going to get stronger. More efficient power delivery means better neural feedback, which means deeper integration. You'll feel the mech respond even faster than before. If the integration is successful, Markov said from ground level, where she was studying the arc reactor specifications Tony had shared. We're talking about merging technologies from 2 different universes. The failure modes could be catastrophic. Could be, Tony agreed. That's why we're testing in controlled conditions with full monitoring and safety protocols. Jarvis will track every metric, and if anything starts going wrong, we shut down immediately. I'm not risking your life or your mech on untested theory. Chen wandered over from where he'd been examining the fabrication systems. In the inner sphere, what you're attempting would take years of development and hundreds of test subjects. You're planning to do it in weeks with a sample size of 1. That's because in the inner sphere, you're limited by feudal politics and resource scarcity. I have effectively unlimited resources, the most advanced fabrication technology on the planet, and an AI assistant who never sleeps. Also, I've done more impossible things before breakfast than most people do in a lifetime. It's kind of my brand. Arrogance or confidence? Voss asked. Yes, Tony said without hesitation. Jarvis, status update? Reactor housing accessed, sir. Ready to begin removal sequence. I'm detecting some unusual energy signatures, however. The magnetic containment system is still generating a low-level field, even in standby mode. That's normal, Voss called down. Fusion reactors never fully shut down. Complete shutdown requires days of cooldown and risks damage to the confinement system. We keep them in standby between operations. Tony frowned, studying the energy readings. So these mechs are essentially always live weapons? Even powered down, they're generating enough energy to run a small city. Welcome to Battle Mech Logistics, Markov said dryly. Fusion reactors are efficient, but never truly off. It's one of the reasons mech theft is so rare. Trying to transport a live fusion reactor without proper containment would irradiate everyone involved. Good to know. Jarvis, add radiation shielding to the upgrade specifications. If we're going to have walking fusion reactors in the facility, I want triple redundant safety protocols. Tony moved to the reactor housing, examining the magnetic bottles that contain the deuterium-helium reaction. Beautiful engineering. Crude by my standards, but beautiful. The efficiency is lower than arc reactor technology, but the sheer power output compensates. It's like comparing a diesel engine to an electric motor, different approaches to the same problem. Sir, I'm detecting an anomaly in the facility security network. Brief signal interruption, lasting approximately 2.3 seconds. It could be routine maintenance, but the timing is irregular. Tony's head snapped up, combat instincts overriding engineering fascination. Define irregular. The interruption occurred in an access corridor adjacent to the hangar. Standard maintenance protocols schedule such work during designated downtime periods. This is not a designated period. Voss was already moving, dropping from the maintenance platform with practiced ease and heading for his mech's emergency weapons locker. Could be reconnaissance, someone probing your defenses. Or it could be a glitch in the system, Tony said, but his hand was already activating the armor assembly protocol. The Mark 45 began materializing from wall-mounted storage, pieces flying to him and locking into place. Jarvis, full facility scan. I want to know if we have uninvited guests. Scanning now, sir. Security systems reporting. Anomalous heat signatures in multiple locations. They weren't there 30 seconds ago. Markov and Chen were already arming themselves, years of combat training triggering automatic threat response. How many? Markov asked. 6 signatures, moving in coordinated pattern toward the hangar. Heat levels consistent with enhanced metabolism. Sir, I believe we're looking at extremis soldiers. Tony's faceplate snapped shut. Of course it's extremis. Because Killian apparently didn't learn his lesson the first time. Everyone get to defensive positions. Jarvis, seal the hangar and alert shield. We're about to have company. The facility alarms began blaring as Tony lifted off, repulsors flaring. Behind him, 3 mech warriors moved with military precision toward their machines, even knowing that 2 of the 3 mechs were powered down for maintenance. Voss reached his Timberwolf's cockpit and began the startup sequence, praying the reactor would cycle up fast enough. Through the facility's speakers, Jarvis's voice remained calm despite the crisis. Sir, the intruders have breached hangar bay doors. Multiple hostile signatures confirmed. Extremis enhancement detected. They're armed with Hammer Industries prototype weapons. Hammer and Killian working together, Tony snarled. That's a team-up nobody wanted. Okay, new plan. I hold them off while you get those mechs operational. How long until the Timberwolf is combat ready? 3 minutes minimum. Voss called back, his hands flying over startup controls. Reactors cold, weapons systems offline. I'm running emergency protocols, but fusion reactors don't boot instantly. 3 minutes might as well be 3 hours. Tony's HUD lit up with target acquisition data as 6 figures breached the hangar. Humans glowing with internal heat, their skin taking on the characteristic orange veins of extremis enhancement. They carried weapons that looked like Hammer had been studying Chitauri technology and decided to make something even more destructive. The lead soldier smiled, heat rippling around him. Tony Stark, we're here for the mechs. Stand down and nobody gets hurt. Tony charged his repulsors. I've heard that before. It's never true. Jarvis, record this for the lawsuit I'm filing later. Hammer Industries is officially on my permanent blacklist. Noted, sir. Might I suggest aggressive defensive action? Way ahead of you. The first repulsor blast lit up the hangar, and the battle for the battle mechs began. The extremist soldier absorbed Tony's repulsor blast directly to his chest, the enhanced tissue glowing brighter as it metabolized the energy. He grinned through the heat haze surrounding his body and returned fire with a weapon that shouldn't have existed. A Hammer Industries pulse rifle augmented with what Jarvis immediately identified as reverse-engineered Chitauri energy cores. Well, that's new and terrible, Tony said, banking hard as the energy bolt carved through the air where he'd been hovering. Jarvis, those weapons are pulling from the same tech that nearly destroyed New York. How did Hammer get his hands on Chitauri cores? Unknown, sir. However, the energy signature suggests significant modifications. Mr. Heindoster, Hammer appears to have been busy during his congressional probation. Tony fired a concentrated unibeam that sent 2 extremist soldiers flying backward, their enhanced bodies smoking but already regenerating. Probation clearly didn't take. Make a note. Recommend stricter oversight for arms dealers who try to kill Avengers. Behind him, Voss's Timberwolf was cycling through startup procedures with agonizing slowness. The fusion reactor's magnetic bottles were initializing, containment fields stabilizing, but the weapons systems remained dark. Chen had reached his Jenner and was attempting similar emergency protocols, while Markov stood guard with a laser rifle that looked like a child's toy compared to the firepower filling the hangar. An extremist soldier charged her position, moving with superhuman speed. Markov didn't hesitate. She fired 3 precision shots that would have dropped any normal human. The laser rifle burned through the soldier's torso, but the wounds sealed almost instantly, tissue regenerating faster than the damage accumulated. They're not staying down. Markov backed toward her mad cat, firing continuously. Standard weapons aren't effective. Extremis grants regeneration proportional to available body heat, Tony explained, dodging another pulse rifle blast. You need to overwhelm their healing factor or disrupt their thermal regulation. Jarvis, switch to cryoweapons. Let's cool them down. The Mark 45's shoulder pods rotated, revealing specialized ammunition Tony had developed for exactly this kind of enhanced opponent. Ice blue projectiles streaked across the hangar, Bikers, impacting 2 extremist soldiers and flash freezing them in blocks of supercooled gel that their heat generation struggled to overcome. 2 down, 4 to go. And yes, I know they're not actually down, just temporarily inconvenienced. Work with me here. The lead extremist soldier, the one who'd spoken earlier, raised his pulse rifle toward Voss's cockpit. Last chance, Stark. Stand down or we start targeting the pilots. Tony's response was a repulsor blast that sent the soldier crashing into fabrication equipment. Here's a better idea. You leave my facility before I show you why threatening people under my protection is a career-ending move. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and your precious mechs are offline. What are you going to do? Talk us to death. From behind Voss's Timberwolf, a new voice rang out. He's going to stall until we're operational. Standard tactical doctrine: delay enemy advance until reinforcements arrive or defensive assets come online. Eric Voss stood in his mech's cockpit hatch, neurohelmet secured, his hands moving over the startup controls with the confidence of someone who'd done this under fire countless times. Chen, status? Reactor approaching critical temperature. Weapons systems initializing. 30 seconds. Markov? Mad Cat is cold. Reactor won't cycle for another 2 minutes minimum, but I've got manual weapon access. She'd climbed into her cockpit and was manually overriding safety protocols, bringing weapons online using backup power that would give her exactly 1 salvo before depleting. The extremist soldiers realized their window was closing. 3 of them opened fire simultaneously on Voss's position, while the 4th moved to plant what looked like a shaped charge on Chen's Jenner, clearly planning to disable or destroy the mech if they couldn't steal it intact. Tony intercepted the demolition specialist with a flying tackle that sent both of them crashing through fabrication equipment. The extremist soldier's skin burned at over 3,000 degrees, hot enough to make Tony's armor scream heat warnings, but he held on. Repulsors fired at point-blank range directly into the man's fusion-heated core. Jarvis, maximum power to repulsors. I want this guy's extremist reaction so overwhelmed his body can't maintain cohesion. Sir, that level of output will drain your arc reactor to critical levels. Do it. The repulsor blast intensified to blinding white. More energy than Tony had ever channeled through a single weapon system. The extremist soldier screamed as his enhancement couldn't regenerate fast enough, his body literally coming apart under the sustained energy assault. When Tony released him, the man collapsed, unconscious and barely breathing. His extremist enhancement temporarily burned out. 1 actual down, Tony gasped, his arc reactor flickering as Jarvis rerouted emergency power. Not my best moment, but effective. Voss's Timberwolf roared to life. The sound was unlike anything in Earth's military arsenal. A fusion reactor achieving full power, magnetic bottles containing forces that could level buildings, myomer muscles tensing with enough strength to crush tanks. The 75-ton assault mech straightened from its maintenance position. Weapon systems cycling online with predatory efficiency. Reactor nominal, weapons hot, targeting systems active. Voss reported, his voice carrying the cold calm of a mech warrior in combat mode. All hostiles acquired. Permission to engage? Granted. Tony rolled away from the extremist soldiers still standing. Light them up, Captain. The Timberwolf's right arm came up, the extended-range large laser mounting tracking its targets with computer-assisted precision. Voss fired, and a coherent beam of concentrated light carved across the hangar with enough power to cut through starship hulls. The extremist soldiers scattered, but one wasn't fast enough. The laser caught him center mass, and even extremist regeneration couldn't compensate for having his torso vaporized. Threat eliminated, Voss said without emotion. 2 hostiles remaining mobile. Stark, recommend you clear the firing lane. Tony didn't need to be told twice. He rocketed upward as the Timberwolf's left arm weapon, an LBX autocannon loaded with cluster ammunition, opened fire. The weapon system was designed to shred enemy battle mechs at range. Against human-sized targets, even enhanced ones, it was devastating. Hundreds of submunitions filled the hangar with a storm of hypervelocity projectiles that no amount of regeneration could withstand. When the firing stopped, 2 more extremist soldiers lay broken and unconscious, their enhancements struggling to repair damage across hundreds of impact points simultaneously. Chen's Jenner joined the fight, its lighter frame moving with startling agility as its reactor came online. Weapons hot, acquiring final targets. Markov, you operational? Negative, still cold. But I've got manual firing solution on that last soldier near the blast doors. Voss, paint the target. The Timberwolf's targeting laser designated the final extremist soldier, who was attempting to retreat while firing his pulse rifle in a desperate suppression pattern. Markov squeezed her manual trigger, and the Mad Cat's PPC, particle projection cannon, discharged with a crack of artificial thunder. A bolt of man-made lightning crossed the hangar and struck the soldier directly, the electrical discharge overwhelming his nervous system despite extremist enhancement. He went down hard, twitching as residual electricity arced across his body. Silence fell over the hangar, broken only by the hum of fusion reactors and the crackling of damaged equipment. 6 extremist soldiers lay defeated, their enhanced bodies struggling to recover from injuries that had exceeded their regenerative capacity. Tony landed, his armor smoking slightly from the sustained combat. Okay, that was closer than I'd like. Jarvis, status report? All hostiles neutralized. Shield response teams arriving in approximately 4 minutes. Arc reactor at 43% capacity and recharging. Facility damage extensive but repairable. No casualties among friendly forces. Voss powered down the Timberwolf's weapons, but kept the reactor hot, clearly not trusting the immediate situation. That was a coordinated assault by enhanced soldiers with advanced weapons specifically targeting our mechs. Someone planned this operation carefully. Killian and Hammer, Tony said, already pulling up security footage. Has to be. Extremist soldiers with Hammer Industries weapons. It's their signature on every aspect of this attack. Chen climbed down from his Jenner, checking his sidearm habitually, despite the threat being neutralized. They'll try again. This was reconnaissance in force, testing your defenses and our response time. Next time they'll bring more soldiers or different tactics. Next time they'll face a fully operational battle mech lance and very angry Avengers. Tony countered. Jarvis, compile evidence for S.H.I.E.L.D. and start tracking Hammer's movements. I want to know every facility he owns, every asset he controls, and every person on his payroll. Already compiling, sir. However, I should point out that Mr. Hammer has become quite skilled at obscuring his activities through shell corporations and offshore accounts. Finding direct evidence may prove challenging. Markov joined them at ground level, her expression troubled. In the inner sphere, this kind of assault on a mercenary company would trigger immediate retaliation. You strike our lance, we burn your facility to the ground. It's how we maintain deterrence. Tempting, but probably illegal in several countries, Tony said. We do things differently here. Evidence, legal proceedings, occasionally punching people in the face when the law doesn't work fast enough. But first, he looked at the 3 mech warriors. We finished the upgrades. They came after your mechs because they know how valuable they are. We make them so advanced that stealing them becomes impossible, and operating them without you becomes suicide. S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel began flooding into the hangar, Director Fury leading them with his characteristic scowl firmly in place. Stark, care to explain why my facility just got attacked by glowing super soldiers? Your facility? Tony raised an eyebrow. I'm pretty sure the deed says Stark Industries. But to answer your question, Corporate espionage mixed with revenge plots. Killian and Hammer want the battle mechs. They sent extremist soldiers. We sent them home in body bags or close enough. Fury surveyed the damage with a single calculating eye. This is exactly the kind of incident I warned you about. Advanced dimensional technology attracts exactly the wrong attention. Now we have two of the world's most dangerous men working together to acquire weapons that could destabilize global power dynamics. Then help us stop them, Voss interjected. You have resources, intelligence networks, legal authority. We're mercenaries from another universe with exactly 3 battle mechs and a billionaire with anger management issues. We could use the backup. Tony shot Voss a look. I'm standing right here. I know. I said what I said. Fury actually smiled, which was somehow more terrifying than his scowl. I like you, Captain. You're honest. That's rare in my line of work. He turned back to Tony. Here's how this works. S.H.I.E.L.D. provides enhanced security, intelligence support, and legal cover for your operation. In exchange, you share whatever technology comes out of this integration project. Not the mechs themselves, those stay with their pilots, but the derivative research, arc reactor improvements, fusion technology applications, anything that could benefit Earth's defense capability. You want to militarize the technology, Tony said flatly. I want to ensure that if Hammer and Killian succeed in building their own version of these mechs, we have countermeasures. You're not the only genius on the planet, Stark. Eventually, someone will figure out fusion reactor technology or neural interfaces or whatever other innovations these machines represent. When that happens, I want our side to be ready. Tony looked at Voss, Markov, and Chen. Your call. They're your mechs, your technology. I'm not sharing anything without your permission. The 3 mech warriors exchanged glances. That wordless communication of combat veterans who'd learned to trust each other's judgment. Finally, Voss nodded. Share the derivative research. The mechs and core battle mech specifications stay proprietary, but applications and improvements can be distributed. On one condition, S.H.I.E.L.D. helps us get home. You have resources Stark doesn't. Intelligence on dimensional physics, alien technology that might create stable bridges, whatever exotic physics projects you're hiding in classified facilities. We need all of it. Fury extended his hand. Deal. Welcome to S.H.I.E.L.D. consultation, mech warriors. Try not to destroy any more of our facilities. As Voss shook Fury's hand, Tony couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just made a deal that would have massive implications down the line. But the extremist soldiers lying unconscious in the hangar were proof that Voss was right. They needed allies with resources and reach beyond what even Tony Stark could provide. Jarvis, he said quietly, increase security protocols by a factor of 10 and start designing countermeasures for extremist soldiers. Next time Killian comes for these mechs, I want to be ready to hand him his ass on a vibranium plate. Of course, sir. Might I also suggest adequate rest? You've been awake for 37 hours. Sleep is for people who aren't upgrading interdimensional war machines. Now let's get back to work. We have mechs to enhance and corporate villains to frustrate. 3 days after the extremist attack, Tony sat in his workshop at 4 a.m., staring at holographic readouts that refused to make sense. The arc reactor integration into Voss's Timberwolf should have been straightforward. Replace the magnetic confinement system, route power through upgraded myomer actuators, calibrate the neural interface for increased feedback. Should have been. Wasn't. The problem is philosophical, he muttered, manipulating the hologram to show power flow patterns. My tech is designed for elegance and efficiency. Theirs is designed for durability and redundancy. They don't want to integrate. They want to fight each other. Across the workshop, Eric Voss sat at a terminal studying the same data from a mech warrior's perspective. Since the attack, he'd barely left the facility, spending his time either guarding his lance or helping Tony troubleshoot the integration problems. Sleep had become optional for both of them, fueled by coffee and the particular obsession of engineers who'd found a problem that refused to yield. In the inner sphere, we'd call this a technology incompatibility crisis, Voss said. Star League-era Lost Tech often has similar integration issues with modern systems. Different design generations, different baseline assumptions about how machines should function. Except both our systems work perfectly independently. It's only when we try to merge them that everything goes sideways. Tony highlighted a section of the power routing. Look at this. The arc reactor wants to deliver smooth, consistent power. Your myomer muscles are designed to handle surge loads from the fusion reactor's variable output. When we connect them, the myomer systems read the stable power as insufficient and demand more, which overloads the arc reactor's regulation systems. So we need an intermediary system, something that translates between the two technologies. Voss zoomed the display to show the connection points. A buffer that accepts arc reactor output and converts it to the surge pattern myomer expects. Capacitor bank, Tony said immediately. Advanced supercapacitors that store energy and release it in controlled bursts. The arc reactor charges them continuously. The myomer draws power in the surge pattern it's designed for, and everyone's happy. He was already pulling up designs, his hands moving through the holographic interface with practiced speed. Jarvis, can we fabricate supercapacitor arrays with sufficient charge density to handle battle mech power demands? Theoretically, sir. The energy storage requirements are significant, but within fabrication parameters, if we use the vibranium composite substrate you developed for the Mark 45's power system. Estimated fabrication time, 16 hours. Start production, Priority Alpha. Sir, Priority Alpha fabrication is reserved for emergency armor repairs during active combat scenarios. This is an emergency. We have corporate villains planning their next attack, and our main defensive assets are half upgraded and non-functional. That qualifies. Voss watched the fabrication systems begin their work. Robotic arms moving with mechanical precision to build components, molecule by molecule. You know, in my universe, this kind of manufacturing capability would make you more powerful than most planetary governments. The ability to prototype advanced technology in hours instead of months is strategically decisive. Here too, Tony admitted. It's why I don't advertise it. The moment people fully understand what this workshop can do, every nation on Earth will either try to recruit me or eliminate me as a threat to established power structures. I prefer staying in the uncomfortable middle ground where I'm useful enough to protect, but scary enough that nobody wants to find out what happens if they push too hard. Comfortable with your enemies, wary of your friends. That's a mercenary's mindset. Is it? Tony looked at Voss with genuine curiosity. You've been remarkably open about your culture, your technology, your combat doctrine. That doesn't strike me as typical mercenary behavior. Voss was quiet for a moment, then said, because we're not in the inner sphere anymore. The strategic calculus that governs mech warrior behavior, protect your technology, maintain competitive advantage, never reveal capability until absolutely necessary. That only matters when you're competing with other mercenary companies for contracts. Here, we're not competition. We're refugees who need your help to survive and eventually return home. Plus, I'm sharing technology just as openly, Tony pointed out, which is insane by inner sphere standards. In our universe, you'd have been assassinated by Comstar within a week of demonstrating arc reactor technology. The fact that you're alive and operating freely suggests this world has very different rules about technological development. Oh, people try to kill me regularly, Tony assured him. I've been attacked by terrorists, corporate rivals, government agencies, alien invasions, artificial intelligence, and my own business partner. The difference is, I've survived all of it and built better armor in response. Attempted murder is just Tuesday for me now. That's horrifying. That's superhero life. Welcome to Earth. We have great coffee and terrible job security. The workshop door opened, admitting Sophia Markov and James Chen, both looking like they'd actually slept. Markov carried a tablet showing news feeds, her expression troubled. We have a problem, she announced. Hammer Industries just went public with their own revolutionary defense platform. They're calling it Project Titan. Tony's blood went cold. Show me. Markov pulled up a press release with accompanying promotional video. Justin Hammer stood before cameras, that insufferable smirk firmly in place, as behind him technicians unveiled what was clearly an attempt to reverse engineer battlemech technology. The design was crude, bulky, obviously cobbled together from stolen specifications and Hammer's existing weapons platforms. But the basic silhouette was unmistakable. A bipedal combat mech, roughly 30 feet tall, armed with weapons that looked like scaled-up versions of military hardware. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, Hammer's voice oozed from the video. Hammer Industries is proud to present the future of military defense. Project Titan represents the next evolution in powered armor technology, combining cutting-edge artificial intelligence with unprecedented firepower. Unlike certain other defense contractors, the smirk intensified. We believe advanced military technology should be available to all nations who wish to protect themselves, not hoarded by individuals with hero complexes. He built a mech, Chen said unnecessarily. It's garbage compared to real battle mech engineering, but he built it. How? The attack 3 days ago, Tony realized, pulling up security footage from the extremis assault. They weren't just trying to steal your mechs. They were scanning them, gathering data, recording every detail their sensors could capture during the fight. Jarvis analyzed the video. How much technical data could they have obtained? Analyzing, sir. Based on the sensor equipment visible on the extremist soldiers' equipment, they could have obtained detailed surface scans, weapons discharge data, reactor energy signatures, and actuator response patterns. Insufficient for complete reverse engineering, but adequate for basic replication of design principles. That's all Hammer needed. Tony's hands clenched into fists. He doesn't have the sophistication to build real battlemech technology, but he doesn't need it. He just needs something that looks impressive enough to secure military contracts and legitimize his claim to developing competing technology independently. Voss studied the Project Titan design critically. It won't work. The power-to-weight ratio is completely wrong. The weapons mounting will create stability issues, and unless he's solved fusion reactor miniaturization, which he hasn't, that machine will have maybe 20 minutes of combat operation before power depletion. It's a mock-up designed to impress shareholders, not a functional combat platform. Doesn't matter, Markov said darkly. If he's gone public, he's protected. We can't retaliate against Hammer Industries without looking like we're suppressing competition, and every intelligence agency on the planet now knows that mech technology is achievable, which means everyone will start developing their own versions. Arms race, Tony said quietly. We wanted to prevent this exact scenario. Instead, Hammer just kicked off a global race to develop giant robots with military applications. Within 6 months, every major power will have their own mech development program. Chen was already running calculations on his tablet. If they're using the data they stole from us, their designs will inherit the same basic architecture as inner-sphere battle mechs. That means similar vulnerabilities, similar tactical continue 3-gen doctrines, similar weapons integration. We know how to fight these things. It's literally what mech warriors trained for. You're thinking like a soldier, Tony said. I appreciate that. But the bigger problem is strategic. Once mech technology proliferates, we're looking at a fundamental shift in how warfare works. Tanks become obsolete, infantry becomes vulnerable, air superiority becomes questionable against anti-air equipped mechs. The entire global military balance shifts, and nobody's prepared for the implications. Welcome to the inner sphere, Voss said with bitter humor. We've been living with those implications for centuries. Battle mech warfare defines everything: strategy, economy, politics, social structure. Once you have functional combat mechs, everything else becomes secondary. The only counter to a mech is another mech, which means everyone needs mechs, which means endless production and endless conflict. That's exactly what I wanted to avoid. Tony pulled up global military spending data, already running projections for how nations would redirect budgets toward mech development. The numbers were staggering. Within a decade, we're looking at trillions of dollars shifted to mech programs, conventional militaries restructured around mech doctrine, and proxy wars fought with walking weapons platforms instead of human soldiers. Is that better or worse than current warfare? Markov asked. At least mechs can be disabled without killing the pilot. Pilot survival rates in battle mech combat are significantly higher than infantry casualties in conventional warfare. Tell that to the civilians living in cities where mech battles happen, Tony countered. A battle mech firefight in Manhattan would level city blocks. Collateral damage from weapons designed to destroy 60-ton war machines doesn't discriminate between targets and bystanders. The workshop fell silent as everyone processed the implications. What had started as an attempt to help 3 stranded mech warriors return home had spiraled into a technological arms race that could reshape global civilization. And at the center of it, Justin Hammer's insufferable face smirking from every news channel. We need to control the narrative, Tony said finally. Jarvis, prepare a press release. Stark Industries is announcing a partnership with S.H.I.E.L.D. to develop defensive mech technology strictly for disaster response and planetary defense scenarios. Emphasize civilian safety applications, search and rescue capability, infrastructure support. Position it as humanitarian technology, not military hardware. Sir, that's essentially a lie. These machines are military platforms. It's strategic truth management. If we frame the technology as primarily defensive and humanitarian, we limit how other nations can justify their own weapons programs. Nobody wants to be the bad guy openly developing war machines while Stark Industries is saving earthquake victims. Voss looked skeptical. You think nations care about international perception when military advantage is available? No, but their citizens do. Public opinion shapes policy, and policy shapes development priorities. We can't stop the arms race Hammer started, but we can influence its direction. Make it politically costly to develop pure weapons platforms, reward defensive and humanitarian applications, and create a framework where mech technology serves society rather than just military interests. That's remarkably idealistic for someone who made his fortune selling weapons, Markov observed. I stopped selling weapons years ago after watching terrorists use my technology to kill innocent people. Learned my lesson the hard way. Tony's expression hardened. I won't make that mistake again. If mech technology is coming to Earth, and apparently it is, thanks to Hammer, then I'm going to do everything possible to ensure it's used responsibly, or at least less irresponsibly than it could be. Chen pulled up the Project Titan specifications Hammer had publicly released. These are deliberately incomplete. He's showing just enough to prove the concept works while hiding critical details. Classic military contractor behavior: demonstrate capability, secure government funding, then develop the actual technology using taxpayer money. Then we beat him at his own game. Tony's mind was already racing through possibilities. The particular manic energy that meant sleep was going to be impossible for at least another 24 hours. We finish the Timberwolf integration, document every improvement, and publish the research openly. Not the full specifications. Voss is right that we can't just hand out battlemech blueprints, but the underlying principles: arc reactor integration methodology, power management solutions, safety protocols. Make it all available under open source licensing. You want to give away your technology? Voss looked stunned. I want to ensure that when other nations develop mech technology, and they will, they do it safely and responsibly instead of cutting corners like Hammer. Open source development means peer review, safety standards, and collective advancement rather than proprietary arms race dynamics. It's damage control on a global scale. Markov smiled slowly. You're going to make Hammer's military contracts worthless by making the underlying technology freely available. Nobody will pay premium prices for Hammer Industries mechs when they can build equivalent systems using open-source Stark Industries research. Now, you're thinking like a superhero engineer businessman. We compete on implementation quality and innovation, not on hoarding fundamental technology. Hammer wanted to profit from stolen battlemech technology? Fine, I'll make sure he can't monopolize it. Tony looked at each of them. But I need your permission. This is your technology originally. I won't publish anything without your consent. The three mech warriors conferred silently, and Tony could see the internal debate playing across their faces. Everything in their training said, protect technological advantages, maintain competitive superiority, never give potential enemies information they could use. But everything in their current situation said adapt or die, and Earth operated under different rules than the inner sphere. Do it, Voss said finally. Publish the research. If battlemech technology is coming to Earth regardless, at least this way it develops with some measure of responsibility. And maybe, he paused, considering, maybe when we get home, we can take some of those principles back with us. The inner sphere could use less proprietary warfare and more cooperative advancement. Tony extended his hand, and Voss shook it firmly. Then we have work to do. Jarvis, prepare the research documentation for publication, and send a message to Hammer Industries. Something subtle and professional that conveys, nice try, but you're about to learn why competing with Tony Stark is a bad idea. I'll endeavor to capture that sentiment diplomatically, sir. You're the best, Jarvis. Now, let's finish building the most advanced battlemech in the multiverse, and make sure Hammer's publicity stunt becomes the most expensive mistake of his career. 2 weeks after Hammer's announcement, the Avengers facility hummed with activity as the final integration phase reached completion. Eric Voss stood in the Timberwolf's cockpit, neural interface cables connected to his helmet, watching as systems he'd piloted for years displayed readings he'd never seen before. Reactor output nominal, he reported, his voice carrying the controlled tension of a test pilot. Arc reactor integration stable. Power delivery is, Jarvis, these numbers can't be right. I'm showing 340% of standard output. The readings are accurate, Captain Voss. Jarvis responded through the mech's communication system. The arc reactor is providing base power, while the fusion reactor handles peak loads. Combined output significantly exceeds either system independently. Additionally, the supercapacitor arrays are maintaining charge at 97% efficiency. You effectively have unlimited combat endurance within thermal parameters. Tony stood at the monitoring station, watching telemetry flood across holographic displays. Beside him, Director Fury observed with his characteristic skepticism, while SHIELD technicians recorded every detail. The political dimension of this test wasn't lost on anyone. Success meant validating technology that would reshape global military doctrine. Failure meant potentially catastrophic destruction and the loss of dimensional refugees Tony had sworn to protect. Heat levels? Tony asked, already knowing the answer but wanting confirmation. Dramatically reduced, Voss reported. The arc reactor's efficiency means less waste heat generation, and the improved heat sinks you integrated are dissipating what little thermal buildup occurs. I could fire continuously for minutes without overheating. In standard battlemech doctrine, that's impossible. Standard battlemech doctrine just became obsolete, Tony said with satisfaction. Chen, Markov, your mechs showing similar performance? Lieutenant Markov's voice came through from her Mad Cat, which had completed integration 2 days prior. Confirmed. My PPC capacitors are charging 30% faster, and heat dissipation is phenomenal. I ran a full weapons test yesterday, continuous fire for 90 seconds, 0 performance degradation. In the inner sphere, I'd be worried about ammunition cook-off or reactor breach. Here, the systems just keep performing. Sergeant Chen had taken his Jenner through mobility tests that morning, pushing the light mech to speeds that should have been structurally impossible. Speed is up 18%. Maneuverability dramatically improved. The arc reactor's stable power delivery means my jump jets can fire longer and more frequently. I can stay airborne for extended periods instead of brief hops. Fury crossed his arms, studying the data with a tactical analyst's eye. So, what you're telling me is you've taken war machines from another universe and made them significantly more dangerous. I've made them more capable, Tony corrected. Dangerous depends on who's piloting them and why. These 3, he gestured to the mech warriors, are professionals who've been fighting wars for years. They understand restraint, collateral damage, rules of engagement. They're not going to rampage through Manhattan just because they have better power systems. But Hammer will, Fury said quietly, or whoever else acquires this technology without the moral framework these pilots bring. It was the conversation they'd been avoiding, the central problem that had no easy answer. Enhanced battlemech technology was now demonstrably achievable, publicly acknowledged, and inevitably going to proliferate. The question wasn't whether other nations and organizations would develop their own versions, but how quickly and how responsibly. That's why we published the safety protocols, Tony reminded him. 47 pages of thermal management, structural integrity requirements, pilot protection standards, and weapons safety systems. Anyone building mechs using our research has to implement those safeguards or risk catastrophic failure. Unless they're willing to risk catastrophic failure for military advantage, Fury countered. Some nations won't care about safety if it means fielding mechs 6 months earlier than competitors. Voss's voice cut through the debate. Then those nations will learn why battle mech combat requires trained mech warriors, not just functional machines. A poorly built mech with an untrained pilot is a liability, not an asset. They'll lose machines to mechanical failure, friendly fire, and tactical incompetence. Natural selection applies to military technology. Bad designs get eliminated by better ones. That's cold comfort for anyone caught in the crossfire, Fury said. It's reality, Voss replied without apology. The inner sphere learned these lessons over centuries. Earth is going to learn them much faster, with or without our help. At least this way, you have functional examples and experienced pilots who can teach proper doctrine. Tony made a decision he'd been considering for days. Jarvis, open a secure channel to all Avengers. Priority alert. And get me Dr. Strange. We need mystical consultation on dimensional physics. Sir, assembling the Avengers for what appears to be a successful test seems excessive. I'm not assembling them for the test. I'm assembling them because we need to discuss something bigger. Tony looked at Fury. You wanted derivative technology for Earth's defense. Here's my proposal. We formalize it. Create an Avengers mech division, fully integrated with SHIELD oversight. 3 experienced pilots training Earth's defenders in proper battle mech doctrine, with me providing technological support and continued innovation. Fury's eye narrowed. You're proposing to militarize the Avengers? I'm proposing to ensure that when mech technology inevitably becomes standard military hardware, the good guys have the best training and equipment available. We can't stop proliferation. Hammer already guaranteed that. But we can influence how it develops and who masters it first. Voss powered down the Timberwolf's weapon systems, the test officially complete. In the inner sphere, elite mech warriors are strategic assets. Mercenary companies with legendary pilots command premium contracts and shape conflicts through their participation. If Earth is entering an era of battle mech warfare, experienced pilots become more valuable than the machines themselves. And conveniently, you have 3 such pilots who need protection and resources, Fury observed. We have 3 refugees who've been forced to adapt to your universe's conflicts. Markov interjected, her mad cat turning to face the monitoring station. We didn't ask to be here. We didn't ask to become training instructors for Earth's militaries. But if our presence has triggered technological advancement that's going to happen regardless, we might as well guide it toward less catastrophic outcomes. The hangar bay doors opened, admitting Captain Steve Rogers in tactical gear, Natasha Romanoff moving with her characteristic lethal grace, and Bruce Banner looking vaguely confused about why he'd been summoned. Behind them, the distinctive golden portal of a Mystic Arts doorway materialized, depositing Dr. Strange with his usual theatrical flair. Tony, Steve said, taking in the 3 upgraded battle mechs with professional assessment. Jarvis said it was urgent. Something about dimensional refugees and military transformation. Something like that. Tony gestured to the mechs. Everyone. Meet Captain Eric Voss, Lieutenant Sophia Markov, and Sergeant James Chen. Mech warriors from an alternate universe where humanity colonized the stars and developed giant robot combat as their primary warfare method. They arrived 2 weeks ago. I've been upgrading their technology, and Hammer Industries tried to steal their mechs, which triggered a global arms race that's going to fundamentally transform how warfare works on Earth. Strange blinked. I was tracking an incursion in the dark dimension. What did I miss? Giant robots from space, Natasha summarized. Industrialists trying to weaponize them. Tony trying to control proliferation through open-source innovation. Standard Tuesday. Nothing about this is standard, Bruce said, studying the battle mech specifications on his tablet. These fusion reactors alone represent a paradigm shift in energy generation. And the neural interface technology, This is direct brain-to-machine connection at levels we've never achieved. The implications for prosthetics, medical applications, even enhanced human cognition. He trailed off, mind already racing through possibilities. Focus, Bruce, Steve said gently, then turned to Tony. What do you need from the Avengers? Institutional support for formalizing battlemech technology integration into Earth's defense infrastructure. Strange. I need your assessment on dimensional mechanics. Specifically, can we safely return these three to their universe without causing incursions or timeline damage? Cap, I need your tactical evaluation of how mech warfare changes combat doctrine and what that means for the Avengers' operational strategies. Natasha, I need intelligence on who else is developing mech technology and how far along they are. And Bruce, you want me to study the fusion reactors and see if we can scale the technology for civilian power generation. Bruce finished, already on it. These reactors could solve global energy crisis within a decade if we can miniaturize and safety-proof them. Strange approached the Timber Wolf, mystical energy swirling around his hands as he examined the dimensional signatures that still clung to the machine. Interesting. The displacement was violent. Reality literally tore to accommodate their arrival. The energy signature matches reports of anomalous dimensional activity across multiple universes. Someone or something is weakening the barriers between realities. That's deeply concerning, Tony said. Any idea who or what? Several possibilities. The TVA has been fractured since the sacred timeline broke. Kang variants are moving across dimensions with increasing frequency. Or it could be natural dimensional degradation as the multiverse becomes less stable. Strange's expression was troubled. Sending them home safely requires precise dimensional coordinates and a stable bridge. I can attempt the calculations, but success is not guaranteed. Voss had been listening from his cockpit, and now he spoke carefully. If returning home is uncertain or dangerous, we need to consider that we might be permanent residents of this universe, in which case, establishing our role here becomes critical. We're not heroes like you, but we're not civilians either. We're soldiers, and soldiers need purpose. Hence the proposal for an Avengers mech division, Tony said. Formalized training program, proper integration with Earth's defense networks, and most importantly, control over how battlemech technology develops. We set the standards, we train the pilots, we ensure that when nations deploy mechs, they do it responsibly. Steve studied the three mech warriors with the assessing gaze of someone who'd commanded soldiers across multiple wars. You're combat veterans. How many years? 12, Voss said. Started as a recruit in the Free Rasselhag Republic military, went mercenary after the clan invasion, fought across the inner sphere in conflicts ranging from border skirmishes to planetary invasions. 15 years, Markov added. House Steiner initially, then mercenary work when I realized noble house politics were more interested in bloodlines than competence. 8 years since augmentation, Chen said, touching his neural implants. Spent 2 years learning to pilot after the surgery, 6 years in active combat. Youngest Lance member, but my reaction times are 30% faster than baseline due to the neural optimization. And you're willing to train Earth defenders? Steve asked. Teach warfare methods from your universe to ours? If the alternative is watching untrained pilots destroy cities because they don't understand thermal management or weapons discipline, yes, Voss said firmly. Battlemech combat has rules, not legal rules, but practical ones learned through centuries of warfare. Ignore them and you die, or worse, you kill your own people. Someone needs to teach those rules before Earth learns them the hard way. Natasha had been studying her tablet, intelligence reports scrolling past with concerning speed. Russia, China, and 3 European nations have announced mech development programs in the last week. North Korea claims to have functioning prototypes, which is almost certainly propaganda, but concerning nonetheless. Hammer Industries has secured contracts with 4 countries and 6 private military corporations. The proliferation is already accelerating. Then we need to move faster, Tony decided. Cap, I need you to work with Voss on combat doctrine integration. Figure out how Avengers tactics adapt to include mech support. Natasha, coordinate with S.H.I.E.L.D. to identify which nations are approaching mech development responsibly and which ones are cutting corners that will get people killed. Bruce, fusion reactor research with safety as absolute priority. Strange dimensional mechanics. Find a way to send them home safely, or at least determine if it's possible. And you? Strange asked. I'm going to finish what I started. Tony pulled up a holographic display showing the arc reactor integration specifications, now formatted for publication. I'm releasing the complete research, every innovation, every safety protocol, every lesson learned from this integration project. Anyone who wants to build advanced battle mechs will have access to the same information. Level playing field, maximum transparency, and if Hammer wants to compete with that. He smiled coldly. Let him try. Fury stepped forward, his decision clearly made. S.H.I.E.L.D. approves formal integration of the Mech Warrior Unit under Avengers Operational Command. Provisional status pending security clearances and full background verification, which is impossible given they're from another universe, so we'll improvise. Captain Voss, you're hereby designated Avengers Consultant with specialization in mechanized combat doctrine. Your lance operates as autonomous unit under Avengers Tactical Command. Voss climbed down from the Timberwolf, standing at attention in a posture that spoke to years of military discipline. Understood, Director. We accept the designation and associated responsibilities. Good. Because if this goes wrong, I'm blaming Stark. You always do, Tony pointed out, because it's usually your fault. Fair enough. The Avengers dispersed to their assigned tasks, leaving Tony alone with the 3 battle mechs and their pilots. The weight of what they'd just committed to hung in the air. Earth was entering an age of mechanized warfare, guided by refugees from a universe where such warfare had become civilization's defining characteristic. Jarvis, Tony said quietly, what are the odds this ends well? Insufficient data to calculate precise probability, sir. However, historical patterns suggest that introducing transformative military technology invariably leads to conflicts that test humanity's capacity for restraint and wisdom. So, we're probably doomed. That has been the case with most of your initiatives, sir, and yet we persist. I believe humans call it optimism. Tony looked up at the Timberwolf, its upgraded armor gleaming under the facility lights, its weapons systems capable of devastation on scales Earth had never experienced in human versus human combat. And in its cockpit, a soldier from another universe who'd agreed to help humanity navigate the transformation that was coming, whether anyone wanted it or not. Optimism, Tony repeated. Yeah, let's go with that. Better than the alternative. The attack came at 3 a.m. because of course it did. Tony was in his workshop beneath Stark Tower, finalizing the last details of the open-source publication, when Jarvis's alarm protocols triggered every defense system simultaneously. Sir, hostile incursion detected. Multiple signatures, extremis enhancement confirmed. Heavy transport vehicles approaching from 3 vectors. Hammer Industries identification on manifests. but vehicles have been modified with military-grade armor and weapon systems. Tony was already moving, the Mark 45 assembling around him as he ran toward the launch bay. How many? 18 extremist soldiers, sir. But that's not the primary concern. They're transporting something large, approximately 40 feet tall, heavily shielded, energy signature consistent with... The workshop wall exploded inward as a massive metal fist punched through reinforced concrete like tissue paper. Through the dust and debris, Tony saw Justin Hammer's Project Titan in all its terrible glory. A 35-foot combat mech that looked like someone had taken battle mech concepts and filtered them through military-industrial incompetence and corporate greed. Meet Titan Alpha. Hammer's voice boomed through external speakers, the man himself visible in a cockpit that looked more like a fish tank than a proper pilot interface. Hammer Industries' answer to interdimensional refugees and Stark industry monopolies. Fully functional, heavily armed, and ready to claim what rightfully belongs to. Tony fired a repulsor blast that sent Hammer's mech stumbling backward, its balance clearly terrible. Jarvis, alert the Avengers facility. We have corporate raiders with a giant robot. Again. Already transmitting, sir. Captain Voss is launching now. ETA 4 minutes. Great. Tell him to hurry because Hammer brought 18 glowing super soldiers and a mech that looks like it was assembled by drunk college students with a hardware budget. Titan Alpha recovered, its right arm mounting what appeared to be a scaled-up minigun, tracking Tony's flight path. Hammer fired, and the weapon system immediately demonstrated why rushing technology was a bad idea. The recoil nearly tore the arm from its mounting, and the accuracy was so poor that bullets shredded Hammer's own transport vehicles instead of hitting Tony. Jarvis, analysis. The mech is structurally unsound, sir. Power distribution is inefficient. Weapons mounting creates instability, and the pilot interface appears to be direct manual control rather than neural interface. Mr. Hammer is essentially flying a very large, very unstable weapons platform, with all the grace of a drunk elephant. So he built a death trap. Of course he did. Tony dodged another burst of minigun fire that destroyed a significant portion of his workshop's fabrication equipment. Okay, that's expensive. Jarvis, collateral damage counter? Approaching $7 million and climbing, sir. Send Hammer the bill, with interest. The extremist soldiers breached the facility through the hole Titan Alpha had created, their enhanced bodies glowing in the darkness. But this time, Tony was ready. The workshop's defense systems activated, automated turrets loaded with the cryo-weapons that had proven effective in the previous engagement, along with sonic disruptors tuned to frequencies that interfered with extremist thermal regulation. "Welcome to my house," Tony said, and the defenses opened fire. Extremist soldiers were flash-frozen mid-charge, their superhuman regeneration struggling against supercooled gel that locked them in place. Sonic disruptors caused violent spasms in their enhanced metabolism, forcing them to burn through energy reserves, maintaining cohesion instead of attacking. Within 30 seconds, half the strike force was neutralized. Hammer saw his soldiers falling and panicked, which in a 40-foot mech with terrible balance meant disaster. He fired all weapons simultaneously, minigun, missile pods, and what looked like experimental energy cannons, without considering the recoil. Titan Alpha tipped backward, crashed through the workshop's outer wall, and tumbled into the Manhattan street with the grace of a collapsing building. "Oh no," Tony said without sympathy. If only someone had published comprehensive safety protocols about weapon recoil management in mech combat. "Oh wait, I did. 3 days ago. For free." He launched through the hole in his wall, emerging into Manhattan night air to find Titan Alpha struggling to stand, its right leg hydraulics clearly damaged from the fall. Citizens were fleeing in panic. 40 feet of war machine in Midtown Manhattan was exactly the kind of crisis that made New York's property insurance rates astronomical. Jarvis, civilian evacuation status? NYPD and emergency services responding. Evacuation proceeding, but we have approximately 400 civilians still in the immediate danger zone. Recommend you prevent further destruction until area is clear. Tony landed between Titan Alpha and the fleeing civilians. Repulsors charged. Hammer, stand down before you kill someone. I'm not standing down. Hammer's voice was panicked, the reality of his situation clearly exceeding his planning capability. I came here to prove Hammer Industries can compete with Stark technology, and I'm not leaving until... Whatever he wasn't leaving until remained unspoken as Eric Voss's Timberwolf landed behind him. Its 75 tons hitting pavement with enough force to crack the street. The upgraded battle mech had covered the distance from the Avengers facility in record time. Chen's Jenner arriving seconds later from a different vector, while Markov's Mad Cat took position on a nearby rooftop. Its PPC tracking Titan Alpha with targeting laser active. Mr. Hammer. Voss's voice came through external speakers with the cold authority of someone who'd commanded battlefield operations across star systems. You are operating a structurally compromised mech in a civilian area without proper training or safety protocols. Power down immediately or we will disable your machine by force. Hammer made the worst possible decision. He fired at the Timberwolf. The missiles launched, their targeting systems as poorly calibrated as everything else about Project Titan. Most missed entirely, detonating against buildings and, thankfully, empty streets. 2 impacted the Timberwolf's chest armor, and Voss barely reacted. Armor integrity at 98%. Voss reported calmly. Confirming hostile action. Chen, disable his weapons. Markov, prepare to immobilize. Stark, civilian safety is priority. Keep him contained. Chen's Jenner moved with the enhanced speed the arc reactor integration provided, circling behind Titan Alpha faster than Hammer could track. The light mech's medium lasers fired with surgical precision, not at the cockpit or critical systems, but at the weapon mountings Voss had identified as structurally weak. The minigun assembly exploded, the missile pods detonated in their housings, and the energy cannons simply stopped functioning as their power feeds were severed. Weapons disabled, Chen reported. Target is effectively disarmed, but still mobile. Hammer tried to run, which in a damaged mech meant stumbling forward and nearly falling again. Tony fired repulsors at the legs, targeting the already damaged hydraulics. The right leg collapsed entirely, sending Titan Alpha to its knees. Markov's targeting laser painted the mech's back, and her PPC charged with a distinctive whine that promised devastation. Final warning, Mr. Hammer, Markov said. Exit your mech now, or I demonstrate why battle mech-grade weapons are called that. The cockpit hatch popped open, and Justin Hammer emerged, hands raised, his usual smirk replaced with genuine terror. Don't shoot. I surrender. This is illegal detention of a private citizen engaged in legitimate business operations. You attacked my facility with 18 enhanced soldiers and a war machine, Tony said, landing beside the fallen Titan Alpha. That's not legitimate business operations. That's assault with a deadly weapon. Corporate espionage, reckless endangerment, and destruction of property worth approximately, Jarvis, $14 million in climbing, sir, accounting for both facilities and public infrastructure damage. $14 million, Tony repeated, plus the cost of cleaning up your extremist soldiers, repairing my workshop, and traumatizing approximately 400 civilians. You're going to have a very interesting conversation with law enforcement. Shield helicarriers were already descending, their searchlights turning night into day as agents rappelled down to secure the area. Director Fury emerged from the lead carrier, his expression promising consequences that would make Hammer wish he'd stayed in prison after his previous arrest. "Justin Hammer," Fury said with satisfaction. "This time we're adding deployment of unauthorized military technology in civilian areas to your charges. That's a federal offense with a minimum sentence of 20 years. Hope your lawyers are good." Hammer was dragged away, protesting loudly about rights and lawyers and legitimate competition, his voice fading as SHIELD agents loaded him into an armored transport. The remaining extremist soldiers, those not already disabled, surrendered without fight, clearly recognizing when they'd catastrophically lost. Tony surveyed the damage to his workshop and surrounding streets. Millions in repairs, weeks of reconstruction, and inevitable congressional hearings about whether private citizens should be allowed to own facilities that attract giant robot attacks. Just another Tuesday, being Tony Stark. "Nice shooting," he said to Chen, whose Jenner stood like a mechanical guardian over the disabled Titan Alpha. "That was surgical-level precision." "Neural interface optimization," Chen said. "I think, and the weapons fire exactly where intended. It's what makes the difference between collateral damage and clean disabling shots." Voss's Timberwolf approached Titan Alpha, the mech warrior studying Hammer's creation with professional disdain. "This is what happens when amateurs build battle mechs. Insufficient structural integrity, poor weight distribution, weapons systems that create catastrophic instability. If he'd fought a real mech warrior in this machine, he'd have died in the first 30 seconds. And now everyone's going to see footage of it failing spectacularly," Markov observed from her rooftop position. "That should slow the proliferation slightly. Nothing advertises bad engineering like public failure." But Tony wasn't so sure. Already he could see news cameras filming everything, social media lighting up with footage of the battle. Hammer's failure would be analyzed, studied, and learned from. Other nations and corporations would see what went wrong and correct those mistakes in their own designs. The arms race wouldn't slow, it would accelerate as everyone tried to avoid Hammer's errors. Strange appeared through a portal, having missed the actual fight but arriving for the aftermath. I detected significant dimensional instability during the combat. The energy discharge from these weapons is affecting local reality in ways I don't fully understand." "That's concerning," Tony said. "How concerning are we talking?" "The fabric of reality around battle mech combat becomes temporarily weaker. Not enough to cause immediate problems, but repeated battles could create lasting dimensional vulnerabilities." Strange studied the three mechs thoughtfully. "The universe is not meant to handle weapons that operate at these energy levels with this frequency. The more mech combat occurs, the more we risk unintended breaches. So we need to solve the dimensional bridge problem faster," Voss said. "Get us home before our presence and the technology we've brought causes permanent damage to your universe." "We're working on it," Strange assured him. "But the calculations are complex, and one mistake could strand you in a dimension far worse than this one, or kill you in transit. The mystic arts can manipulate dimensional barriers, but safely navigating to a specific universe requires precision we're still developing." Tony looked at the three battle mechs standing in his destroyed workshop's vicinity, at the SHIELD agents securing the area, at the civilians cautiously returning now that the danger had passed. This was supposed to be a simple problem. Help 3 stranded soldiers return home while preventing technological proliferation. Instead, it had become a race against time to prevent dimensional instability, control a global arms race, and somehow manage a billionaire genius's recurring tendency to make every situation more complicated. "Jarvis," he said tiredly, "start repair protocols on the workshop and order pizza. I'm going to need fuel for the all-nighter this is about to become." "Multiple pizzas, sir?" "Enough for 3 mech warriors, 1 exhausted superhero, and inevitable Avengers who'll show up wanting to hear about the giant robot fight they missed. So, yes, multiple." Overhead, the sun was beginning to rise on a Manhattan morning that had started with corporate terrorism and ended with captured villains and disabled war machines. In the grand scheme of Tony Stark's life, it barely registered as unusual. But the dimensional instability Strange had detected worried him more than he wanted to admit. Every day the mech warriors remained in this universe increased the risk of something worse than Hammer's incompetence. Something that couldn't be solved with repulsor blasts and superior engineering. They needed to solve the bridge problem. Soon. Before the universe decided it had had enough of interdimensional refugees and their giant robots. 6 weeks after the Hammer Industries incident, Tony stood in a SHIELD facility that technically didn't exist, watching Dr. Strange inscribe mystical symbols in midair, while Bruce Banner monitored dimensional energy readings that made quantum physics look straightforward by comparison. The project had consumed every resource Tony could marshal. Avengers support, SHIELD's classified technology archives, even a consultation with Thor about Asgardian dimensional travel methods. The dimensional bridge was almost ready. "The calculations are solid," Strange said, his hands moving with practiced precision as golden light traced complex geometric patterns. "I've cross-referenced with the Ancient One's texts, consulted with Wong, and run simulations through every mystical framework available. This should create a stable pathway to the universe matching the energy signature we recorded from their arrival." "Should," Bruce emphasized, adjusting quantum field stabilizers that Tony had designed specifically for this project. "The margin of error is still significant. We could miss their home universe by a fraction of a dimensional degree and send them somewhere completely different. Different timeline, different history, potentially hostile." Eric Voss stood beside his Timberwolf, now fully upgraded and representing the pinnacle of combined Earth and inner sphere technology. Sophia Markov and James Chen waited near their own mechs, all 3 mech warriors showing the calm focus of soldiers preparing for a mission with uncertain outcomes. "We understand the risks," Voss said. 6 weeks ago we were fighting in the periphery, then suddenly here. If there's even a chance this bridge leads home, we have to take it. Our unit is still fighting without us. The mercenary company we contracted with is probably assuming we're dead. Or worse, deserted," Markov added. "In the inner sphere, abandoning your contract is worse than death. It's professional suicide. If we don't return and explain what happened, our reputations are destroyed." Tony pulled up the final integration diagnostics on his tablet, reviewing systems he'd spent weeks perfecting. The arc reactor integration had exceeded every expectation. The 3 battle mechs were now capable of sustained combat far beyond anything their original universe could match. Weapons that didn't overheat, power systems that never depleted, armor that could absorb punishment that would have crippled standard mechs. "You could stay," he said quietly. "The Avengers Mech Division is operational. We've already started training programs with SHIELD personnel. You've proven yourselves valuable assets, and frankly, Earth could use experienced soldiers who understand mechanized warfare." The proliferation hasn't stopped. 17 nations now have active mech development programs. Your expertise would save lives. Chen touched his neural interface implants thoughtfully. In another life, maybe. This universe has good coffee, amazing technology, and pizza that makes military rations look like war crimes. But it's not home. The inner sphere is complicated, brutal, full of political games and endless wars. But it's our complicated, brutal universe. We belong there. Honor demands we return, Markov said simply. We accepted a contract. We have obligations. The fact that dimensional displacement interrupted those obligations doesn't excuse us from fulfilling them once return becomes possible. Tony understood, even if it frustrated him. He'd grown to respect the three mech warriors over the past weeks. Their professionalism, their competence, their willingness to share knowledge that their own culture treated as precious secrets. Losing them meant losing institutional knowledge about battle mech warfare that Earth was going to desperately need as mech technology proliferated. But he also understood obligation, duty, and the weight of responsibilities that couldn't be abandoned just because circumstances changed. Then let's get you home, he said, closing the tablet. Jarvis, final systems check. All systems optimal, sir. The dimensional bridge generator is charged to capacity. Dr. Strange's mystical framework is stable. The targeting coordinates match the energy signature from the original rift within acceptable parameters. We are as ready as theoretical physics and mystic arts can make us. Steve Rogers approached, having arrived to witness the departure. Behind him, Natasha, Thor, and even Nick Fury. The Avengers assembled to see off 3 soldiers who'd unexpectedly become allies. Captain Voss? Steve said, extending his hand. It's been an honor working with you. You've taught us tactical doctrine we never considered. If you ever make it back to this universe, you've got a place with the Avengers. Voss shook firmly. The honor was ours, Captain. And if dimensional travel becomes more reliable, maybe we'll take you up on that. The inner sphere could use heroes like you, people who fight for principles instead of political advantage. Thor clasped Voss's shoulder with Asgardian enthusiasm. You are mighty warriors. I have faced many foes in my centuries, but watching your mechs in battle was truly glorious. Perhaps one day I shall visit this inner sphere and test myself against your finest champions. Please don't, Markov said with a smile. The clans already have a complicated honor system. Adding a literal god to the mix would break everyone's brains. Natasha handed each mech warrior a small device. Quantum beacon. If you ever make it back to this universe, activate it. We'll find you. Also works as a communicator across dimensional barriers, theoretically. Strange and Stark built in some mystical technological hybrid functionality that neither will admit is mostly guesswork. It's very sophisticated guesswork, Tony protested. It's untested theory, Strange corrected, but it should work, maybe. Your confidence is overwhelming, Chen said dryly, pocketing the device. Fury stepped forward last, his expression unreadable. I won't pretend I'm not concerned about what happens when you return home with technology decades ahead of your universe's standard. You're walking dimensional violations of non-interference protocols that don't technically exist, but probably should. We'll be careful, Voss promised. The arc reactor integration, the weapons upgrades, the improved systems. We'll claim they're experimental inner sphere technology we were testing when the jump drive malfunctioned. Nobody will question 3 mercenaries having unusual equipment. Half the mech warriors in the periphery field customized machines with suspicious origins. And if someone does question it, Fury pressed, then we tell them the truth, that we were displaced to another universe, received help from its defenders, and returned with technology that might help prevent some of the inner sphere's endless conflicts. Voss met Fury's gaze steadily. We're not going to become arms dealers or start a technological revolution. We're going to finish our contract, return to our company, and try to live quiet lives as professional soldiers. The upgraded mechs are just tools that help us survive. Fury nodded slowly. Good luck, Captain. And if you ever need extraction from interdimensional complications, S.H.I.E.L.D. has your back. Probably. Then if we figure out how dimensional rescue operations work. Strange finished the final preparations, the mystical symbols now forming a complete framework suspended in mid-air. A doorway carved from mathematics and magic, physics and faith. Through its shimmering surface, Tony could almost see something. A distortion that might be another universe, or might be wishful thinking given form. The bridge is ready, Strange announced. But I need to be clear about the risks. This is one-way transportation. Once you cross, the bridge collapses behind you. If something goes wrong, if we missed some variable or made a calculation error, you could end up anywhere in the multiverse. We won't know if you arrived safely. We won't be able to retrieve you if you end up somewhere dangerous. This is a leap of faith backed by science and sorcery. But still fundamentally a leap. We're mech warriors, Voss said. Climbing into his Timberwolf Continue-3 John's cockpit. Leaping into danger with faith in our machines is what we do. This is just one more drop. Except instead of drop ships, we're using dimensional bridges. The principle is the same. Markov and Chen mounted their mechs, systems powering up one final time in Earth's universe. The 3 battle mechs stood ready. 75 tons, 55 tons, and 35 tons of advanced warfare technology about to cross dimensional barriers, carrying innovations that could reshape their entire civilization. Jarvis, Tony said quietly, record everything. If this works, we'll want to study how. If it fails, we'll want to know what went wrong. Recording, sir. And if I may say so, this is either the most brilliant scientific achievement of your career or the most catastrophic failure. I find myself hoping for the former. That makes 2 of us. Strange raised his hands, and the dimensional bridge expanded, growing from abstract framework into genuine passage between realities. The energy it radiated made Tony's arc reactor resonate sympathetically, responding to forces that shouldn't exist but undeniably did. Through the portal, he could now clearly see something, a star field, jump ships, the distinctive silhouette of what had to be a drop ship from the Inner Sphere's military fleet. It's working, Bruce said, astonished. The dimensional coordinates are locked. That's their universe. We actually did it. Coordinates locked, pathway stable, energy flow nominal. Strange confirmed. Captain Voss, the bridge is ready. But be advised, it will only remain stable for 90 seconds. After that, dimensional pressure will collapse the structure. You need to cross quickly and all together. No second chances. Voss's voice came through the comm system one last time. Understood. Stark, Strange, Avengers. Thank you for everything. You took in 3 stranded soldiers, gave us shelter and resources, and worked to send us home when you could have just as easily imprisoned or studied us. We won't forget that, and we'll make sure the Inner Sphere knows that somewhere in the multiverse, there's a universe where heroes actually live up to the name. Good luck, Captain, Steve said. Give them hell, the good kind. We'll do our best. Voss's Timberwolf moved forward, its upgraded systems humming with power. Lance, advance. Standard drop formation. Chen on point, Markov on my 6. Let's go home. The 3 battle mechs advanced toward the dimensional bridge, their massive frames moving with the practiced coordination of a unit that had fought together through countless battles. Chen's Jenner crossed first, its light frame disappearing into shimmering light. Markov's Madcat followed, its distinctive silhouette vanishing into dimensional uncertainty. Voss paused at the threshold, his Timberwolf turning back one final time. Through the cockpit glass, Tony could see the mech warrior's face, scarred, tired, but determined. A soldier who'd been yanked from his war and dropped into another, who'd adapted and fought and survived, and was now returning to finish what he'd started. The Timberwolf crossed the dimensional bridge. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then the portal collapsed with a soundless implosion, mystical energy dissipating as the framework dissolved. The dimensional bridge was gone, and with it, 3 mech warriors who'd unexpectedly become allies. Did it work? Tony asked, knowing nobody could answer with certainty. Strange lowered his hands, exhaustion clear on his face. The dimensional pressure stabilized correctly. The energy flow completed without catastrophic interruption. All indicators suggest successful transit. He paused. But I can't confirm they arrived safely. The multiverse doesn't provide receipts. Bruce was already analyzing the recorded data. The quantum signatures match the original displacement event within acceptable parameters. If Strange's calculations were correct, and based on this data, they were, then they should have arrived in their home universe, roughly contemporary to when they left. Time dilation was minimal, so they won't return decades after their disappearance. Should have, roughly, minimal, Tony repeated. Science is supposed to be more definite than that. Dimensional mechanics aren't science in the traditional sense, Strange said. They're reality manipulation using structured belief systems we call magic. The fact that it works at all is borderline miraculous. Thor clapped Strange on the shoulder, nearly knocking the sorcerer over. You accomplished a mighty feat, wizard. Across infinite realities, you created a path home for lost warriors. This deserves celebration. Who wishes to join me for Midgardian drinks? I wish to sleep for approximately 16 hours, Strange said. Dimensional bridge creation is exhausting in ways that transcend physical fatigue. I believe I've used magic equivalent to fighting Dormammu's forces for 3 consecutive days. Tony looked at the space where the portal had been, where 3 giant robots had crossed into uncertainty, armed with technology from Earth and hope from soldiers who just wanted to return home. Somewhere in the multiverse, Eric Voss was either stepping out of his Timberwolf onto familiar ground or emerging into a nightmare dimension that would kill him in seconds. Schrodinger's mech warriors, simultaneously successful and catastrophically failed until observation collapsed the probability. Jarvis, maintain monitoring of dimensional signatures around the former bridge location. If anything comes back through, or if we detect any unusual activity, I want to know immediately. Of course, sir. Might I suggest you also rest? You've been awake for 41 hours. Sleep can wait. We have work to do. Tony pulled up holographic displays showing the global mech development programs. 17 nations, dozens of corporations, hundreds of research teams, all racing to build their own versions of battle mech technology. The proliferation they'd tried to control had become unstoppable. A cascading technological revolution that would reshape human warfare within a generation. They're out there, Natasha said quietly, understanding Tony's concern. In a universe we can't reach. Probably fighting wars we can't help with. Using technology that might change their entire civilization. And we'll never know if we did the right thing, Tony agreed. Gave them upgraded weapons, sent them home, potentially destabilized their entire universe's balance of power. Classic Tony Stark. Solve one problem, create three more. Steve shook his head. You gave 3 soldiers the tools to survive and the chance to return home. Whatever happens next is on them, not you. We did what heroes do. We helped people who needed it. The consequences are theirs to manage. When did you become the voice of moral certainty? Tony asked. 1943. It's been pretty consistent since then. Steve smiled. Come on, Thor's right. This deserves celebration. We successfully navigated interdimensional mechanics, defeated corporate villains, and sent 3 warriors home. That's a win in my book. As the Avengers filed out, discussing drinks and debriefing and the inevitable congressional hearings that Tony's life seemed to attract, he remained behind for 1 more minute. Looking at empty space where impossible technology had briefly resided, where soldiers from another universe had stood, where reality itself had bent to accommodate human will and scientific achievement. Somewhere in the multiverse, Eric Voss was climbing out of his Timberwolf, or he was dying in dimensional transition, or he'd arrived 1,000 years too late or too early, or in a universe where humans never evolved and dinosaurs built the battle mechs instead. Infinite possibilities, zero confirmation, and the uncomfortable reality that Tony Stark, genius, billionaire, philanthropist, futurist, had built a dimensional bridge based on calculations that might be completely wrong. Jarvis? Yes, sir. If I ever suggest building interdimensional bridges again, remind me how terrible the uncertainty feels. I shall add it to the extensive list of activities you've requested I prevent you from attempting, sir. Right between building sentient AI and challenging Thor to drinking contests. Good. Now let's go get those drinks and start planning for whatever comes next, because something always comes next. Tony Stark left the empty facility, his arc reactor glowing steadily in his chest, his mind already racing ahead to the next crisis, the next innovation, the next impossible problem that would require solutions nobody else could imagine. Behind him, in the space where the dimensional bridge had existed, quantum fluctuations briefly spiked, whisper quiet confirmation that somewhere, in some universe, 3 battle mechs had emerged from a portal into familiar starfields. The signal was too faint for even Jarvis to detect. But for just a moment, reality remembered 3 warriors who'd crossed between worlds and returned home carrying hope wrapped in advanced technology. And in the inner sphere, in a universe of endless wars and battle mech combat, Eric Voss climbed out of his Timberwolf and looked up at stars he recognized, finally, blessedly home. The global arms race that the mech warriors' arrival had triggered continued, transforming Earth's military landscape over the following months. Nations developed their own battle mech variants. Some successful, many catastrophically flawed. Tony Stark's open-source research prevented numerous disasters as engineers worldwide implemented safety protocols learned from his integration work. Hammer Industries declared bankruptcy after Justin Hammer's criminal conviction, their assets seized and redistributed to repair the damage Project Titan had caused. The Avengers Mech Division became operational with SHIELD oversight, training the next generation of pilots in doctrine that combined inner-sphere combat experience with Earth superhero principles. Captain Rogers proved surprisingly adept at tactical adaptation, while Thor delighted in sparring against practice mechs that he could fight without holding back. Doctor Strange's dimensional research continued, seeking stable methods for cross-universe communication. The quantum beacons occasionally registered faint signals, too weak to confirm but tantalizing in their timing, suggesting that somewhere in the multiverse, 3 mech warriors remembered the universe that had sheltered them and the heroes who'd helped them return home. Tony kept the recordings from the integration project, studying them late at night when sleep proved elusive. The data represented a convergence point. 2 universes worth of engineering knowledge synthesized into innovations that had reshaped both worlds. In the inner sphere, Eric Voss and his Lance became legends, their inexplicably advanced mechs, the subject of rumors and speculation. In the Marvel universe, battlemech technology became humanity's newest military paradigm, guided by principles of responsibility and restraint that 3 interdimensional refugees had helped establish. Some nights, Tony wondered if he'd done the right thing. Enhanced weapons, proliferated technology, potential dimensional instability. The list of concerns never fully quieted. But then he remembered 3 soldiers standing in his workshop, trusting him to solve problems that shouldn't have had solutions. And he knew the answer. Heroes help people. Even when it's complicated. Even when the consequences ripple across dimensions. Even when success and failure blur together until they're indistinguishable. The arc reactor hummed steadily in Tony's chest as he returned to his workshop, ready to face whatever the multiverse threw at him next. Because something always came next. And when it did, he'd be ready, armed with genius, technology, and the lessons learned from 3 mech warriors who taught him that sometimes the best innovations come from the most unexpected places.